I think Anna's still sending that to me. So can we wait just a moment?
Or waiting to get some of the stuff done yet. I can go ahead. I don't know if everybody knows this, but an important day was on November 15th. It was Board Member Appreciation Day.
Oh.
What I do want to be able to say on behalf of the administration, our staff, is we couldn't do our jobs without you. You're leading and guiding us through these difficult times, helping give us the latitude to be able to do the work we need to meet our students' needs and to be able to work collaboratively. And because of that, you're helping us be able to reach our fullest potential. Freddie, I'm apologizing to you right now because when we first talked about the amount of time we thought it'd take for the board meetings and get prepared, I'd have never anticipated we'd be going through all this. Thank you for your dedication and being involved with us and being on the committees, and to all of our board members, because this is unprecedented circumstances. All of you have been stepping up and helping out wherever you can. Committee meetings. With all of you, a happy Board Members Day. We have certificates of appreciation for you. Board members that are on the screen. Next time I see you, I'll make sure you get those. And of course, my hands will have been cleaned and I'll give them to the package with you with rubber gloves on. So with, thank you, board members.
A moment, Kevin.
So as I go through some of the certificates, Mr. Wells Price, want to be able to acknowledge him through his efforts of attending different meetings and participating in events. He gets a lapel pin and is being recognized as a master board member through the Illinois Association of School Boards. Wells, thank you very much and kudos to you.
Overrated.
Okay, I think we're ready now.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Rob Dupont. Erickson.
Here.
Fingerhut, here. Price.
Here.
Gallegos.
Here.
St. Clair.
Here.
Holly.
Here. Okay, the first item tonight is the public hearing for the truth in taxation.
Good evening. Tonight we are going through our truth in taxation hearing. Although the district's not required to hold a truth in taxation hearing each year, in an effort to maintain transparency and to increase our community awareness, the district has historically held a truth in taxation hearing each year, regardless of its requirement to do so. If we could go to the next slide. As we look at tonight's topics, we are going to be going through our timeline of the levy, our equalized assessed valuation versus our limiting rate, our estimated impact on taxpayers, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions. If you'd like to go to the next slide. So as we look at our timeline for the 2020 levy, we first provided an estimate to the board on September 22nd. Then we adopted that estimated levy on October 20th. On October 28th, we published our truth and taxation notice. Again, even though we're not required to do so, we did publish that in the newspaper. On November 2nd, we held a Finance Advisory Committee meeting where they also reviewed the levy documents that we're taking a look at tonight. So tonight we're holding our public hearing, and then after our public hearing, during our action items, we hope to adopt the certificate of tax levy as well as all the resolutions that go along with that. We are required to file our levy documents with the county and the state no later than the last Tuesday of December. Next slide. So every year, annually, based upon our budgetary needs, we determine how much we're going to levy. And that total amount becomes the taxes that we impose by the district. This is done primarily through a document titled Certificate of Tax Levy. The Certificate of Tax Levy is a document authorized by formal action by the board, and that will be done tonight, and signed by the board president and the board secretary and delivered to the Lake County clerk. It's important to realize tax values for the last 6 years of how homes have been increasing for the last 6 years. At the same time, our limiting rate has been decreasing for the last actually 5 years. This year, we have seen a slight increase from prior year, but again, those are all good things for our taxpayers as well as for the district. One of the things I would like to make mention is that the law says that the district will receive whatever received from the prior year, plus something called CPI or Consumer Price Index. So although we see those rates declining, that does not necessarily mean that your tax bill is declining. The tax bills, because the district is allowed to receive whatever it received from the prior year, depending on house values, that determines the rate, not how much the district necessarily receives. So this is a pictorial graph of the historical EAV as well as limiting rates for the district for the past 10 years or so. Next slide. As we look at what we have proposed and what we will be adopting tonight, again, there's an important variance between proposed and estimated. So tonight we're going to be asking for a 4.9% tax increase. We only anticipate we will receive 2.4%. So why do we ask for more than we anticipate to receive? That is because most of the levy is not finalized until the spring of 2021. So right now we are estimating values, and in an effort to make sure that we have the ability to levy the legally required amount that the district's allowed to receive, we have to levy for more than what we anticipate to receive. If we were to only levy what we anticipate we would receive, and our estimations of house values and or new growth came in different than what we originally estimated, the district could lose out on potential revenue. And it's not only that we would lose out on it for this year, we would lose out on it for all of the coming years as well. So again, we ask for more, anticipating less. So we're asking for a 4.9 tax cap increase, although we only anticipate we'll receive 2.4%. The big question everyone asks is, how is this going to impact me as an individual on my house value? So if your house value is worth $100,000 last year, based on what the county has provided as an estimated increase for our overall values of our homes, that doesn't mean that each person is going to go up X percent or go down X percent. We're providing this based on averages, basically. That house value per $100,000 of value would be worth $101,800. So that's our assessed home value that we anticipate to see. Look at how that versus our rates are applied. We're looking at a total estimated increase for the taxpayer of $37. Again, this is per $100,000 of house value. We go to the next slide. This is our opportunity now for the board and or the community to ask questions as it relates to our hearing.
Yeah, I know you said that we didn't, by law, we weren't required to hold a hearing, but can you refresh my memory? I think there's a certain percentage over which we would be required.
Correct. So the district is asking for 4.9% increase. If you are 5% or above, then you are required by law to hold the hearing.
And can you refresh my memory? What did we ask for last year and what did we end up getting so that everyone's aware?
I don't have that right in front of me. If
I'm sorry.
I just have this year's values, but generally
Got
we
it.
ask for 4.9%. That's what we generally ask for. And based on last year's CPI, which I think was similar to this year's, I think we received about the 2.4%. Again, I'd have to pull that data to give you actuals.
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much for participating in our tax levy hearing.
Okay, I move that we close the public hearing for tax levy.
Second,
Seconded by Mrs. St. Clair. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Holly,
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Gallegos. Aye. Fries.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Erickson
Aye.
and DuPont, who has joined us.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to continue with the agenda. The first item on the agenda, as usual, is citizens' comments. Does anyone online wish to address the board this evening? If you would like to do so, please click the raise hand icon on the bottom of the screen. Okay. We'll give it just one more second. If anyone else would like to comment. So far, we have no one. Before we proceed with the rest of the meeting. Okay, we will continue on with our agenda. First up is the District 75 report, and our first topic tonight is from the business office.
Good evening again. Tonight, we are asking that the board adopt our levy resolution as resolutions, as well as our certificate of tax levy.
Okay, any other questions for board members? Okay, we're moving on to the next District 75 report, teaching and learning. First up is literacy.
So I can start us off. So a lot of this will be going back, and Dale and Pat will go through it with you. I'm introducing Dale Truding, who we've got a relationship over the past few years as we went through shared service and is going through as being our literacy coordinator. And with her tonight is Pat Pollock. She has worked with us starting last year and helping conducting the audit for school in regards to literacy, and is working now with our staff and Dale in order to implement a literacy program for our school district. So Dale and Pat are going to be co-presenting, and Dale, Pat, floor is yours. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Hi, we are so happy to be here. And I'm so sorry that I am not able to see the 38 other participants who are watching this webinar. I love to see the people I'm talking to. So I'm sorry about that. We're going to talk about the literacy journey that the staff and leadership team in Mundelein District 75 are embarking upon. We're calling it the Literacy Journey 2020-2024 and beyond. Next. Next slide, please. We truly are so proud of all of the accomplishments in terms of what the teachers have done in this COVID environment, which is nothing we could have ever planned for. So as we develop lifelong readers and writers through collaboration, communication, celebration, and reflection, we hope you will all join us on this journey. Next. So I'd like to share some celebrations and silver linings. I think you know that you have an incredible superintendent who not only is supportive and courageous, but he is truly a visionary leader. There are many superintendents who, when they saw the world of COVID, stepping into the halls of school, they would have said, why don't we just hold off on this literacy adventure for another year? But he didn't. And he didn't because it was a decision that he made based upon what was best for kids. And that was to continue on this literacy journey. There are many philosophical shifts, and I'm sure you read them in the board report, but I just want to mention one of them to you this evening. We frequently talk about teachers teaching reading and writing. We're changing that to teachers teaching readers and writers. And just by making those two words have action to them, allows kids at the beginning of the school, preschool and kindergarten, to truly see themselves as readers and writers and to provide those opportunities for them. I have to tell you, it's one thing to embrace remote learning. It's another thing to embrace other types of changes when remote learning is going on. I also want to commend you for the 2 new coordinator roles that were established in reading, assessment, and special education. Having 2 more leaders on the leadership team brings a new dimension to conversations that we're having. The entire leadership team is so collaborative. We meet at least weekly to talk about what's going on in terms of literacy. Truly, this is a renewed focus in unprecedented times. Next, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pat Pollock, and it's been a privilege and an honor to be invited into your school district to work alongside your students, your teachers, and all of your administrators. The doors have been wide open when I was physically there, and I miss being there. And now all the sessions that we have in a remote setting have been going really well. Last year, when I first visited with the district, Dr. Myers and Dale invited me to walk through the buildings so that I could get to know the instructional practices, look at some of the assessment data, review the resources, and really just get to know what was going on through the lens of literacy as it related to best practices. And through that process, I was able to identify some highlights and then some areas that I felt like we could go back and reflect upon and make some changes. And so while I was going through this process, I have to let you know that not only were the doors wide open, but students would run over to talk with me. It was a really nice, seamless experience where Dan Schwartz and Dr. Myers took turns walking around with me. So I was never alone, and I always had partners, and we had wonderful collegial conversations about things that I was noticing along the way. So in many regards, we could call this an audit, but I'd also like to call it a collegial reflection and learning walk, because I feel like that was what was happening as well. And so one of the things that we did is we analyzed district data to look at some trends. And I know that you had an opportunity to read the report and look at specific information. But in a broad sense, when we analyzed the data, we knew that there was a sense of urgency to reflect on current practices and make some changes so that we could address the foundational skills at a very young age, instilling confidence in students so that they could perform better on these assessments, and then even look at the tools that we were using to find out information about our students as readers and writers and comprehenders and thinkers. When we looked at the curriculum documents, we also recognized that we needed to address some more current practices and make sure that the teachers were armed with something that would provide them a support, not only in their teaching practices, but in their planning practices, and making sure that we triangulated curriculum with teaching and with assessment. One of the things that we're noticing right now, which I personally have observed a difference from last year to this year, is the establishment of routines and rituals and habits of mind that live inside workshop teaching. And so Dale and I will reference that term workshop. And what that means is we're asking both teachers and students to be part of a learning community. And in the learning community, equal time is given with speaking and listening and practicing and applying. So it no longer looks like a teacher is going to stand in front of the room and do a lot of the talking. In fact, when we really do have these routines and rituals and habits of mind established, you will see a big shift where students are owning their learning and participating more actively because they're taking what was modeled from their classroom teacher and applying it to their own reading lives. We already see evidence of this right now, not only in students, but also in the leadership team who have taken on a role of creating some notebook pages that speak about their own reading lives. And so daily routines are not just connected to students, but they're also connected to adult learners. Something else that we noticed right away is when I walked around in the middle school, we were not able to identify an evidence-based resource that would support literacy teaching and learning. These 3 grade levels did have a resource that supported Writers Workshop, but many of the teachers were trying to create materials on their own, using novels or using text sets, but it wasn't an identified cohesive resource where we would be able to see established through lines across the 3 grade levels. In addition to that, when you have 3 buildings in your district, as you do, articulation across those 3 buildings is critical. And so making sure that 2nd grade teachers had open lines of communication to 3rd grade teachers, and 5th grade teachers having open lines of communications to 6th grade teachers, so that we can ensure through lines and practices and consistency was something that we recognized that we would have to work on almost immediately. And so right now we're having conversations with 2nd grade teachers, and we're getting them ready to meet with 3rd grade teachers, just as we are with 5th and 6th grade teachers. But I mention this because this also connects to resources. And so kindergarten through 5th grade is currently using a resource that is based on what I'm going to call a hybrid workshop model, where there are some instructional practices embedded in it that we would like to see in the middle school. But I think what would be, and one of my recommendations was that we begin to not only analyze resources, but what we should first do is identify the instructional model that we wish to see kindergarten through 8th grade, that we begin to work on a glossary of terms for consistency with instructional practices and to make sure that there was clarity for all instructional teachers and building leaders, and that we also reflect upon some of the vision statements as they related to literacy, so that everyone would have an opportunity to contribute to all of these new things that we knew had to be created. And so to synthesize all of that, we are going to be examining resources. We want to arm middle school teachers with evidence-based reading resources that will complement the things that they're already doing. Because at the end of the day, while it's really important for us to support adult learners, we are really keeping our eye on children. And a lot of the data spoke to us in an urgent way. And we knew that we had to make some changes yesterday, quite honestly, so that we could support all students as developing not only readers and decoders, but students who would feel like they had an arsenal or a toolbox of tools that they can use to unpack meaning in really purposeful and intentional ways. And so one way that we could get to this point is by creating a very robust, intentional professional learning plan. And the district was extremely generous and collaborative in creating this plan, in that there are 3 consultants who are currently focusing on literacy best practices, who are meeting with teachers on a weekly basis with topics and areas of literacy instruction that will really enhance their best practices. So when it comes time to analyze new resources, they will be making informed choices. So professional development, for me personally, and I think that I have some partners who are observing right now, is really key to helping improve data, select resources, improve professional practices. But I don't want to say the word improve all the time. I also want to say enhance, because much of what I saw last year are teachers who genuinely care about students. And we are all reflective practitioners. And if we take that care and regard and mix that with an openness to look at new instructional practices, it's a win-win for all. And that's really what's happening right now. I'm going to stop speaking for 1 second, and I'm going to invite Dale to some of these bullet points that talk about dual language and the reading intervention protocols. Dale, you're on mute.
Hi, I'm back. So a few very exciting things have happened, and I'm going to begin with one that happened at the middle school. And the middle school had 1 reading teacher until this year, and they now have 2 reading teachers. So they're changing the way that they're looking at interventions for students at the middle school level. So what they have done is looked at the reading scores of the incoming 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. And after they've looked at their scores, they've selected 20 kids at each grade level who they will be doing some individual assessment work with, so that they will be able to target what skills, strategies, and habits of mind those kids are going to need and provide reading services for them. So this is a change in model and something that is truly supported by the administration and the teachers at Carl Sandburg. In terms of the dual language program, we had the opportunity to test, even in this COVID environment, all children in grades K through 5. The students came in, teachers and administrators did the testing, and teachers even did some individual testing over the weekend so that we could get a real handle on where these kids were when we were able to sit with them on a one-to-one. Students who were in the dual language program also had an opportunity to be tested in both languages to see their strengths and their challenges in each of the languages. We also talked a lot about a classroom environment and how it should support independence. That's a really hard concept in the time of COVID and when you're teaching online. but our teachers have found ways, which we're going to talk about later, to support classroom environments, even on an online setting, even in an online setting. Next slide, please. Pat, I'm going to take your favorite term, glows and grows, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So I do use the phrase glows and grows, as do my colleagues, Erica and Jason. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention them by name right now. I know that you had an opportunity to read about them, but they are part of the list of glows and grows because they are playing an integral role in partnering with all the teachers in learning and adding to and enhancing their best practices. And we are so appreciative of the openness that the teachers have demonstrated to us in their professional learning journey. First thing on the list is I walked around and I noticed that the classroom libraries needed a little bit of nurturing. And so this was good news. When I shared this with teachers, it was very good news. When I shared this with Dr. Myers, I don't know if it was such great news because, of course, mostly anything that I said required looking at a checkbook, so to speak, but auditing a classroom library by genre, by topic, by level, series is so important because when students are back in school, they will have access to this rich, robust classroom library that will enhance their independent reading experiences. And I will speak more about independent reading in a later slide. I think that it is also important that we continue to seek out suggestions and feedback from teachers. And in a few short weeks before the winter break, we're going to be providing the teachers with surveys about the efficacy of the professional learning that has started from August through now, and to see what they would like to have presented to them in 2021. Also in winter of 2021, we're going to be establishing a committee to review the current curriculum resources and then look at some new resources that support a true workshop model. This committee will be very mindful of looking at multiple resources and using rubrics that are research-based when going through the selection process. I'm going to skip over the ones that Dale's going to do, and I'll finish mine, and then I'll turn it back over to Dale. But one of the things that we also wanted to look at is the coaching model. I had a unique opportunity to co-author a professional resource that spoke about the efficacy of the coaching model. I got to study Jim Knight, and I got to study student-based coaching, and Elena Aguilera, among about 7 or 8 other, I'm going to represent them as gurus in the coaching field. And it's always good for districts to analyze the current role and look at the vision statements for that role, and then make sure that it matches what's going on in the district. And it's also important that if you're going to have a coaching role, to give them the support and the professional development that they would need so that they can match the vision of this role within the district. And so moving forward, we're going to be looking at things like that. What is the vision for the coaching model in the district? Who will they be working with? Will they still be called coaches? There's a lot of things that we want to do so that we could provide a level of support to build internal capacity. And that's really a nice segue into the next one, because it says that we're going to continue professional learning support from 2 to 5 years, which is a wonderful commitment to have. But what has to work in tandem of having external support through consultants is that we continue to work on building that internal capacity. At some point in time, a consultant's greatest moment is actually when we get to say goodbye. And it's not that we want to say goodbye, but it's that we have reached that moment of affirmation, ahas, and celebrations where we know we're leaving a district in a really good way. That we know there are so many internal leaders that have been cultivated and have shown such interest as naturally born leaders and have such care and regard for children that we can step away. And we actually really look forward to that moment in time. But while we're still here, we're going to continue to find those leaders that are inside your school buildings and coach them as well, and work with your students. We can't wait to get into your school building so we can sit on the floor and have conversations with them. But more importantly, continue to create a systematic, intentional, collaborative professional learning plan that supports differentiation in professional development. Just as we do that with students in schools, we have to be mindful of the different adult learners as well. And so that's the rationale for using a survey, but it's also the rationale for just having sidebar conversations. My colleague Erica has been lucky enough to have teachers who seek her out for one-on-one coaching sessions. And during those sessions, she is able to get feedback about things they're interested in learning about. And so this is not something where we're going to be identifying everything. It's going to be a collegial collaborative relationship where we all support one another, which then leads to the last bullet. We are in the process of, and we already have shared videos and modules. Internally, they're developing PLCs so that we can all work together in all modes of learning, whether that be from a consultant live or an asynchronous module or an internal building PLC. Our goal is to work over the next couple of years so that we can enhance all the good things that we're currently seeing and continue to support our students so that the data that I referenced on the previous slide starts to change in a positive direction. But more than the data that lives on a page, children's voices will speak confidence about who they are as readers and writers and thinkers. Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about the bullet about establishing a task force for our dual language program. You are to be commended for starting a dual language program 5+ years ago. And one of the observations about the dual language program is you've had a number of directors over the past 5 years, and people come with different philosophies in terms of what dual language programs should look like, sound like, and feel like. And because of the changes, there really needs to be a systematic look at the dual language program. A vision needs to be developed, belief statements need to be developed, and then what will instruction look like in your dual language program, all the way from kindergarten through 8th grade. Jamie DiCarlo is going to speak this evening about the establishment of a task force for the dual language program. And I think this is something that I can say pretty confidently, many of the teachers who are in the dual language program are really looking forward to getting continuous professional learning in this area. So next slide, please. So supporting adult learners. One of the most important things that you can do as school board members. And I have to tell you first about this magical experience we really had this summer. So when I had an opportunity to meet with Dan and Jamie and Dr. Myers, one of the things that was noticed through the audit was that students were floundering in their foundational skills. That's the skills of being able to determine how to pronounce words, how to understand meaning in words, how to use other clues as well to figure out how to read. Since there had not been a consistent program over a number of years, and I do want to say that you had started a program, which I shared with you, called Jolly Phonics about 1.5 years ago, it was my recommendation that we start a research-based systematic approach to teach foundational skills in grades K through 2. So Dan and Jamie and I worked together to find the best program we could offer in a remote setting for our teachers in grades K through 2, our reading teachers and our special education teachers. We had 69 teachers sign up to participate in 30 hours of professional learning online during the summer. That is absolutely remarkable. We were so lucky to find an extraordinary person to do the professional learning in this area. She's continuing with us this year and gives us about a day a month where she does professional learning with small groups, where she does modeling of lessons. And through her own generosity, she is actually teaching a group of students in the K2 building online 5 days a week in order to do modeling for teachers. And she's doing this out of the goodness of her heart and falling in love with the teachers in Mundelein and their devotion to the kids. So that has been incredible. We're looking forward to seeing results. We have anecdotal data from teachers and administrators who say they can't believe what the kids have learned in this short amount of time, even in a remote setting. So we will keep you updated on that. Pat, I'm going to turn the next one over to you.
Okay. So we've already mentioned that we audited the classroom libraries, and similarly to what Dale just said, we had very high attendance over the summer of 4 sessions that either occurred during the day or even in the evening, so that teachers could ask more questions about classroom libraries. The process was that they watched a video recording that spoke about the efficacy of organizing a classroom library. They read some articles. They attended a Q&A session with Dale and myself. And again, it's a credit to the teachers' dedication to do this during the summer. And then in return, they received this wonderful selection of classroom libraries, and then also had the opportunity to self-select some text to complement this base library. And I know a positive outcome when everyone returns to the school setting is you're going to see a lot of grand openings of these classroom libraries. I would often refer to them as ribbon cutting ceremonies, which will be a wonderful experience, especially for the younger children. In addition to that happening over the summer, we have now established our own routine. And that routine is these early release Fridays. And in the afternoons on these Fridays, a variety of internal leaders that I spoke about before, so teachers who have demonstrated leadership qualities, and also the leaders that you have within your district, present alongside our consulting team and Stacy from Orton Gillingham, and we really come up with topics to enhance the professional learning of all adult learners. This has been a wonderful routine. It's something that I very much look forward to. I had mentioned my colleague Erica and the ongoing coaching and now observing teaching at the middle school. This is remarkable in that it's only November, and they just met Erica at the end of the summer. And it really speaks to the value of establishing trusting relationships. One of the things that makes professional learning so enriching and so important, I'm going to say, is when teachers begin to reach out to us as consultants because they value our expertise and they trust us so much so that they're inviting us in to observe them teach. It takes a very brave and courageous teacher to do that. And it's happening already in November. And that's really a tribute to the relationships that Erica is fostering, but also the teachers at the middle school and their willingness to invite someone in and want to learn more. These kinds of behaviors are going to be modeled for students. And the middle school age, they need to see this. They need to see that courage and bravery in their teachers, because that's definitely something they're going to emulate in their own lives. we are participating in unit planning and development across the entire district. Right now, we've been doing it at a slow and steady pace because we also should build in that word reflection. So when we're planning units and developing, we also take the time to reflect and to think about, did that work? Was this the time of year that we should be doing this? Should we be doing this later on? And so this is an ongoing recursive process. We also have established times. Each of us has a different day or a different time, but in the middle of the day, the district was gracious enough to provide teachers with a standing professional learning time. And each week, we get to meet with grade levels for about 45 to 50 minutes to continue discussing best practices in literacy. As an example of this, I know in your board packet, you saw a unit that I'm currently co-building with the second grade teachers. They were so interested in extending a traditional literature unit that they reached out to say, can we teach more of this? Those are like magical words to hear from teachers as a consultant. But I right away got excited for them because this is a wonderful time of year to enrich the lives of children through that lens of traditional literature. And so we started that work just this past week, and we're going to continue next week, where we're building selections of fables and folktales and fairy tales. But more than that, we want the teachers to feel comfortable and confident in modeling the thinking that one does across those examples of traditional literature. And I suspect by the end of this experience, all of those things that we were used to learning, and I will date myself when I was in school, are coming back in really important ways, because it is through traditional literature that students really get to refine their comprehension and understanding about how a story works, all of the elements in the story, and all the things that characters come upon, problems, and the way these problems are solved, because oftentimes children can make personal connections to these stories. This collaboration and articulation stretches beyond these 45-minute sessions because Dale sits in on almost all of them. We can almost guarantee that we're going to see Dale's face pop up in our sessions, and she is a wonderfully positive presence. Her ongoing light and energy speaks to how much she wants the children in Mundelein to be afforded opportunities to feel like a celebrated reader and writer. And that's our goal. Our goal for this entire slide of adult learners is for them to feel like celebrated learners and for children to feel like celebrated learners. And then finally, the professional learning opportunities that have been extended to all of us with the administrative team has been a wonderful complement to the teacher's professional learning. What we're trying to do is bring to light the practices that we want students to experience in the classrooms to the administrative teams. And I know that you had an opportunity to see a link in the board packet of one of your building leaders creating pages about their own personal reading lives. And I think that that is really speaks to the dedication and commitment that administrators have in wanting workshop teaching to be a successful instructional model.
So as Pat shared all that, before we move to the next slide, as a literacy coordinator in D75, I wanted to just be able to explain to all of you that I really feel like the most fortunate party planner for children that anybody could possibly have, because every bit of professional learning that we're doing is really in the name of kids. And there is deep learning going on in these sessions, deep questions being asked, thoughtful questions being asked, and an opportunity for teachers to really be able to share and ask questions in a safe environment. I just want to reiterate what Pat said, and it's only the middle of November. It's true. It is only the middle of November. And Erica Denman, one of our consultants, is actually on this, listening to this board presentation. And I want to tell you that a teacher at the middle school asked her to co-teach once a week through Zoom with the teachers so that they would have that opportunity to plan together, learn together, debrief together, and reflect together. What a testimony to the dedication of these staff members in D75. Next, please. We could talk forever, but we won't, I promise you.
So when we speak about the supporting the development of readers and writers, and that's been our through line tonight, we are in the process of personalizing our professional learning. We have started an exciting process in developing a roadmap, which will really represent for teachers a sequence of how they're going to use their current resource and any other resources that we're folding into the work this year. Again, just to recap, we have these open Zoom sessions with Dale. She's there for anything, questions, answers, chatting about the day. Her open mind really makes it a comfortable setting. And then we too, Jason, Erica, and myself have weekly sessions that we meet with the teachers. We're going to continue to audit the classroom libraries because we really feel like that's going to play an important role in continuing this journey of having students grow as readers. One of the things that I said I was going to reference later on, we've now met. And there are different interpretations for workshop teaching, just as there are different interpretations for independent reading. So I just want to go back and review what workshop teaching means. In addition to gradual release of responsibility, it means that there's a balance between whole group instruction, small group instruction, and independent practice, which means that students are really going to have opportunities to enhance their own learning journey in multiple instructional models. Some children do really well in whole group, and they love and they feed off of the conversations of others, while other children don't. And right now in a remote setting, for some, whole group instruction is very challenging, which is why workshop is a perfect model to fit in remote teaching as well, because it also affords small group work using breakout rooms. We've learned to be very creative, but we can still have this work. And it also allows us to peek in on independent practices. So even when students are working alone at home in books or working on something in their writer's notebook, we still have an opportunity to talk with them about this. And that's called a conference. And so something else that lives inside of workshop teaching, and some of the work that the teachers of District 75 started to work on last year, has to do with those intimate conversations that you get to have with students, where you can pose a question like, so tell me, what are you using as a reader? What are you thinking about as a writer today? And the first time you say that to a student who's unfamiliar with that STEM, they might say something back to you like, I'm using my book and I'm using my pencil, which is a natural response for a young student. But now what we're noticing, when we use those STEMs, students are starting to use the language that their teachers are using. And so workshop affords all of those things. When we get down to independent reading, this is very different than previous experiences where students were asked to read on their own. We had an acronym that was drop everything and read. That's not what independent reading is. We also have heard terms like sustained silent reading. That is also not what independent reading represents, because independent reading is also thinking. Independent reading is making connections. It's using the environment so that I can remember what to do as an independent learner. It's stopping and jotting on a sticky note. It's using my reader's notebook so I can have a reaction to a book, because as we all know, when readers have reactions to books, they remember those books and they might even try to promote that book or convince a friend to read it. And so our hope is, as we make our way through this remote setting and eventually get back into school settings, where everyone gets to be a member of this community, that independent reading will be not only celebrated, but it will enhance the growth of your students, which will directly impact data. Because when students can independently apply what was taught to them through the whole group and small group, we know that their toolboxes are being filled and they're now choosing to use these tools independently, which is really, at the end of the day, a goal of all of ours. And then finally, the modeled lessons and practices. Right now, we are very creative with using recordings and asynchronous settings, but we soon hope to be modeling lessons, even in the remote setting. And because we are all hopeful people, when we could come back and visit Mundelein classrooms.
So I hope before we turn to the next slide, which Pat and I had fun producing, the whole idea of communication, truly listening to the staff and what they see as their needs in order to enhance student learning, is really critical to this whole professional learning journey. In years past, we used to have the expression one and done. Teachers would have a half day when their students would either be with a sub or they'd be dismissed, and somebody would come in and present an idea, a concept for 2 hours, and they were gone. Research on professional development shows that those days of one and done don't work. And even those days of 1 year is really not enough time to give the teachers the type of professional learning and reflection time that they really need to enhance student learning. And I hope you took that away from this presentation. And I meet with every principal every single week. Pat and I talk at least 5 out of 6 days a week. Erica and I plan for 1 hour every single week before we even meet with each of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teams. And the same type of communication goes on at Mechanics Grove as well. So I just wanted to share that. And then I want to share our favorite slide, my favorite slide, with all of you. So Pat and I, on a Saturday afternoon, just about a week or 2 ago, we're talking about all the experiences that we had and all the things we heard kids say or teachers say on camera. So we just wanted to share a few of these with you. My favorite one is I promote books to kids I don't even know at Carl Sandburg, and they read them too. So some of the teachers were having the kids create book trailers, and they put them online for all the other kids in the other grades to see. So see, even in a remote setting, middle school kids get to know each other through their reading lives.
I think my favorite might be connected to Elephant and Piggy, but that might speak to my early days as a primary teacher. I want to read Elephant and Piggy. Mo Willems uses speech bubbles instead of dialogue tags. Now, what's especially impressive about that quote is that the student who's in kindergarten referenced speech bubbles and dialogue tags. So that may not be a formal piece of data, but for me, that's an anecdotal piece of data that tells me that teacher's teaching is sticking because there's evidence in the quote. I never knew poetry could be so much fun. Probably if you ask the teachers in K1 and 2, they will tell you I champion poetry and literary nonfiction all the time, because those are 2 genres that I think students really benefit from. And I wanted to highlight, and now it's starting to come through not only in the teaching, but I think students are really appreciating it, which is why the other quote, we are learning about a new genre called literary nonfiction. That's impressive. I never knew I had a reading identity. I love that quote because I've been saying that we want all students to celebrate that there's a reader inside of them. And now we're telling them that they have a reading identity. And when you have a reading identity, you get to set goals and reflect on how you've met those goals. When I write about reading, I can respond, react, and reflect. Probably some teachers have heard me say that about 25 times. So that might be why that's a quote. And Dale, I'm going to leave the blue one on the bottom to you.
So look at me, I'm a reader. Could you imagine any better words coming out of the mouth of a child? It actually kind of brings tears to my eyes.
Yes.
So we have shared a lot of information. The board report hopefully gave you a lot of information and that you were able to open the links and learn some more about the literacy journey in District 75. And now, slide please. We want to know, what are your wonderings, your questions, your celebrations, and we're here to answer whatever you'd like to know.
Can you explain what a PLC is? Because you had referenced that a couple of times in the slides.
A PLC is a professional learning community. It's an opportunity for teachers at the same grade level, teachers who teach the same content area, to really, one of the major focuses is to look at student work. And so when you've given a common assessment, or when you've tried a particular strategy, and one teacher might have had more success, and another teacher might have noticed that on a common assessment, one teacher's students did better. So how can you help me? What are the strategies you tried? What are the things that worked? What are the things that didn't? In education, there hasn't been a lot of time built in to have those professional learning communities that are around student outcomes and student work. And that's a real simple definition of PLC. Any other questions, wonderings?
Well, maybe along the same lines, how will the teacher evaluate a student's independent reading and document it? And who else will review that documentation?
Okay, so I'm going to take part of the answer, and then I'm going to let Pat take the other part of the answer. So one of the things that is critical beginning in kindergarten is for students to keep some type of reading and writing portfolio that gets passed on from grade to grade to grade, including the rubrics that teachers have used to measure student progress on various pieces of reading or writing, as well as standardized tests. And Pat, I'm going to let you get to the other part.
So those are the more formal structures. When students are working as independent readers, teachers can use a tool called a running record. And what that does is it shows where students are experiencing errors. And then the teachers analyze those errors, and there's a score that comes out. And that's one of the tools that we use to place students in certain levels of text. Reading specialists and coaches and building principals, and now the two individuals who have new roles in the district are going to be tasked with analyzing that data, in addition to a tool called DRA and the standardized tests. Something else that we use when students are reading independently is what I referred to earlier as a conference. It's a short meeting that teachers have that they take anecdotal notes down. And each time they meet with students, they refer to previous notes to see if there have been growth in the area that has been mentioned. And then they offer students different tips by listening to them read during that conference. So those are some of the ways that we would be able to assess what students are doing. Now, when we go in the older grade levels, we use a tool about 3rd grade through 8th grade called a reader's notebook. And there are certain things that students would be asked to write about their reading in this notebook. And we use conferring, sometimes rubrics and checklists, to make sure that the writing about reading is growing over time. And so it's not that we're just looking at that one entry that the student has produced in that day, but we also look across entries to make sure that there's growth. And if there isn't, then we have to analyze why and circle back into some more prescriptive small group instruction.
And that's why you need to continue professional learning communities with teachers. So when they're assessing a student, they're all doing it based on the same criteria. And that is really another critical way to make sure that we are getting to know our students as readers and writers and what they're able to do in the areas in which they need to grow.
So you described for me a number of different tools and techniques to evaluate the student's progress, but I didn't hear whose job it is to make sure that it's actually being done.
Oh,
Well, yes, everything, falls, I'm sorry, Pat. Everything falls on the superintendent, right? He's really the one responsible for everything in those areas, but it's really the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning in coordination with the assistant superintendent for student services. And then the two coordinators play key roles in this, the one who's doing reading and assessment and the one who's doing special education. So it all falls under Dan and Jamie and their roles as assistant superintendents.
and if I could add, it also falls under the role of principals, because principals will meet with teachers at team meetings, and at those team meetings, they could be sharing data. Principals can be sitting in on some PLCs and also discuss student progress and data. And so I think it's like a trickle down, but I think that principals hold a big role in that as well.
And they really do, they do play a key role because they're there with those teachers and kids every single day. The structure needs to be provided by those central office administrators. The actualization of it happens with the principals and the teachers.
So I think that follows on then, somebody confirm, deny that it is primarily the principals that do teacher evaluation, which I would assume documentation of these activities would be part of.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why when Kevin had, Dr. Myers has administrative teams, at least an hour of each meeting is dedicated to professional learning in the area of literacy. And then when I have an opportunity to meet, and Pat and Erica and Jason have an opportunity to meet with principals, this is where we can have some deep conversations and get to the point where they say, help me in this particular area. When I'm going into a classroom, I'm noticing this. Is there something else that I should be looking for? So once you've been able to establish those relationships, you can really dig into areas that principals want to grow in and areas that we think they may need some support.
I noticed this year, at least in my first graders class, they're using the EPIC reading program. Is that being used in all classrooms, or at what levels is that being used? And is that part of the data that the teachers are assessing and looking at in the remote setting when independent reading is being looked at?
So getepic.com is a site that can either be used by schools or family members. It's not part of any kind of program. It's just another e-reading platform or a digital platform that supports independent reading. It happens to be one of the better ones because they offer authentic literature. And so in the time in which we live, finding texts in a remote setting to get into the hands of students, we have to rely on more reputable e-reading platforms, and EPIC happens to be one of them. The data that's gleaned from something like EPIC is not the same data that we're speaking about now. That data is really what's happening with tools that teachers are using that have been research-based. That's not to say that EPIC is not reputable, because out of many of them that are out there, that offers a lot of really rich, authentic examples of literature, but also some videos that enhance content knowledge in science and social studies. And it can track the amount of time that students take to read across a text. I'm always a little bit leery about that because you could go fast and no one will really know. And it tracks some other things, but I don't want to mix that into the data pool that we're referencing right now.
Any other questions?
I would just ask, I had a lot of the same that have already been asked about how are we gonna maintain our internal capacity to, keep this going forward, and had the pleasure actually of talking with Dale yesterday, so I understand some of the systems that you've been mentioning, and I was just curious, Dr. Myers, if you could add any of your personal reflections or contributions to the discussion about how to maintain this going forward in an expeditious and effective way.
Is it possible for somebody to repeat the gist of that question? I know it was really long because it was really hard for us online to hear.
Just the question was from Lisa, was how are we planning on to be able to maintain what we've started, essentially? So the first thing that we do going through the process is get a plan put in place. So when we'd reached out looking at how we could, or who we could work with, Pat, working with Dale and their company, provided a 3 to 5 year plan. So we had an idea there. As a district, what do we do once we've settled on working with them? It's identifying what that potential cost structure would be and identifying this is a priority for us. So from a financial sense, we're making sure as we look forward to budget ahead, this is put as a priority. So that might mean we need to make different moves as far as other programs or products or staffing eventually. But we're not at that point. What we've seen in talking with T is that we allocate and budget things in advance through the years, because I know we have a 5 year budget cycle, what T looks at. And we know we got some flexibility with the number of books that we normally have ordered, and working with Dan and his department because he has a lot of those monies. From an internal standpoint, Pat and Dale just articulated well. From an administrative point, we are really starting to look at ourselves and what we can do to keep supporting this process, being the instructional leaders, going in the classrooms, recognizing the strategies that are taking place with our staff and our students, being able to have those collegial conversations with our staff, being present in the professional development meetings themselves that take place with the teachers. And then ultimately for us, how do we be able to demonstrate what we're doing is working? It's that multi-tiered system of support. So we're gonna have a protocol for the tests our students will be assessed on, the frequency, who's on those teams, to be able to say, yes, in regards to our literacy program, our students are advancing more than a year because we know they need to do that right now for a majority of our students. That'll help us give us the information to say, yes, we can sustain this for a long term until it can have the gradual release where we don't have Pat with us anymore, where our staff are doing this themselves. And that we've got the internal controls from an administrative standpoint, we can keep guiding it through the data we're getting back on our students' performances on the tests that would connect to the teachings and the skills that we're asking our students to do. Good.
Wells, you're on.
Sorry, I got it. Yeah. So here's one. It's probably a little out of left field, and somebody that's been on the board longer, and or Dan, I think you've experienced this because I don't know if Dr. Myers did or Ms. DiCarlo. How does or does not skillful teacher, which was one of the big initiatives to try to get everybody on the same, as I understood it at least, using the same nomenclature and methodologies, if you will, either complement or is different from what is currently being proposed and implemented going forward. And I do appreciate that it is a longer term plan, not a one-shot thing.
Dan, can you reference the skillful teacher?
Sorry, I was just trying to, yes, I couldn't unmute myself. So yes, the skillful teacher complements the work that we're doing in literacy, as well as all of our other content areas. Specifically for literacy, skillful teacher is sort of an overview instructional class. We focus on 3 key elements: areas of performance, repertoire, and matching. Areas of performance are all of those pieces that teachers do on a daily basis: motivation, classroom management, assessment, all of those. The repertoire are all of the things that fit in it. So when we talk about professional development in literacy and in workshop, we're building teachers' repertoires. The key or the cornerstone of all of this is the matching piece, right? We're filling our teachers with additional additional instructional strategies. Now it's about matching it to the situation that they're in, because all of these strategies that we're working on in professional development don't work all the time with every single kid. It's about looking at the data. So referencing what Dale Truding was saying about PLCs, looking at the data, identifying what's working. If something's not working, then we need to match it to some other other repertoire in our area of performance. And so these do really go hand in hand. And so I don't see a misalignment with those.
But I thought we've been doing PLCs for a number of years and analyzing the data, and yet we seem to be regressing rather than making progress.
I think what Dale was referencing about looking at data in small teams, I don't think we're doing it as consistent as maybe we should be. And so we are trying to put in district-wide protocols in our data instead of having protocols at each of our individual buildings.
Good. All right. Well, Dale and Pat, thank you for being with us tonight, all the way from sunny Florida, I believe, and New York. Honored to have you all here. Sure, we'll be hearing from you again. We'll plan on having a follow-up later next semester, just to check in, see how things are going.
Well, it's truly an honor to be working with this district again, and I sincerely mean that. It's quite a special place.
For me as well. And if I could just add a side note, that when I was walking through the buildings, it's the first time ever that I had a superintendent and assistant superintendent remain with me, which really speaks to the commitment they had in the process and in wanting to see their students have opportunities to learn and grow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Dale and Pat.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is equity.
All right, thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much, Board of Education, for giving us this opportunity to discuss kind of where we are currently with our Equity Steering Committee. So I'll just let Anna get the presentation up and running. Are you ready, Anna? Okay. I should take out my guitar and start playing. All right, excellent. So thank you again. We're going to give an update on our Equity Steering Committee. This committee just recently was formed in September, so a relatively new group that's a resource for all of our teachers here in District 75. So next slide, please. Always wanting to connect anything new to the work that we're already doing in District 75. And so you see two big kind of rocks that we've been working on over the last, the one on the left, Skillful Teacher, one that's been long lasting, as well as had made mention to, and the one on the right is a draft of the Portrait of a Learner. And so when we look at studying the Skillful Teacher, we see that a through line for the skillful teacher is cultural competency. And that this is reinforced throughout the program as teachers take this course. And then when we look to the right on our portrait of a learner, it is in draft form, but you see equity kind of throughout it, both embedded kind of in all of the ways our learners we're building learners in our school district, and embedded specifically in the advocate part, where we're hoping that as learners matriculate through our system, both K through 8 and also 9 through 12, that students become an advocate when they see things that aren't the way they should be. So next slide, please. So in September, we put a call out to our schools and asked if anybody was interested in being part of this leadership group that was going to look at a 3 to 5 year plan for equity in District 75. And so on this, I know I saw a couple of people on earlier. I know I saw Brianna and Jenny Rodagero, Jill Unger and Mark Pilot on. And then with me tonight is Evelyn Chavez. Evelyn is one of our dual language teachers at Washington School. She is a co-facilitator with me because I think equity work is something that we're always getting better at and nobody is really an expert at. There are people who are really, really good at it and we want to lean on those people. And Evelyn's been instrumental both in this presentation, but also working with our committee to unpack some of the things that we're learning about. And so when we began this fall, like I said, we did an interest survey. We used that information to create kind of a cross section of our school leadership team and our teachers. And so I'm going to turn it over to Evelyn to talk about some of the themes that our steering committee brought to our first meeting, as well as some of the professional development. So Evelyn, take it away. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good evening, everyone. When, like Dan mentioned, early September, Dan sent out an email for anyone that was interested in being part of this equity steering committee. And I think we all brought our different views of different experiences into this committee, and which enriched our conversations and led us to these really courageous conversations that we had throughout these past weeks that we've been meeting. At the beginning of the committee, when we started getting together, one of the things that Dan asked us to do is to write about our why and our goals in this committee. So when we analyzed these goals, we saw that equity was right there. So everyone was looking for equity in everything that we do, but everyone came in with different ideas. So some of us focused on curriculum and instruction. Some of us looked at equity through our school environment and classroom environment, and others looked at the meaningful changes. So they wanted to see really meaningful changes in our community. And others came in with the lens of reaching out to the community and what resources can we use so that this work with equity goes beyond our classrooms, beyond our school environment. And I think most importantly is how are we going to support our teachers? What resources we're going to provide to our teachers and what kind of education and professional development we're going to provide for them. So those were goals that we came in from day one when we started meeting. Next slide, please. So we embarked in this beautiful journey with Yvette Dubiel, who's the Executive Director of Equity and Center for Professional Learning for DuPage Regional Office of Education, and we embarked into 6 hours of professional development on the topic of anti-racism personal development series. So after we kind of debriefed after our 3 weeks, and these are common themes that we came up with, and things that really motivated us to continue the work that we started doing in the committee. So we began with, I think one of the most powerful aspects of this experience with Yvette was having those really powerful conversations with amongst our committees. So being able to really express our viewpoints, our experiences in terms of racism And noticing that we all have really different experiences, but we all have that goal that we want to provide our students, all our students, with everything that we can provide to them for them to be successful. So one of the things that we talked about is having a common language when we talk about racism, and being able to provide students those opportunities to have those courageous conversations in the classroom. Another thing that we really are motivated into embarking is into providing our students ways in which they can see themselves reflected through our curriculum, through diverse speakers, through diverse field trips, and really empower our curriculum through the lens of equity, identity, and social justice.
And so I think one of the things I would like to add to Evelyn is when we put out the survey, we had asked, like, what are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? Are you watching TED Talks? All of those things. Everybody came with these varied experiences. What getting into a professional learning situation does is it gets everybody thinking and talking about the same language, about the same content, and it gives you an experience that allows you to move it forward to your colleagues and so on and so forth. And so when we go to the next slide, please, even though this group has only really been together for 8 weeks, they've started to create an initial set of goals of what they want this group to sort of guide the way for. And later we're going to talk about our first year and moving towards a 3 to 5 year plan. But in this, you sort of see ideas of ensuring, like Evelyn said, that students can see themselves in our curriculum, in our instruction. We sometimes use the metaphor of windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, that students are able to look out and see other groups. They're able to look at a mirror and see themselves. And they're also able to kind of walk with or move through the sliding glass door and become part and have experiences like in our dual language program when we have our Dia de los Muertos, when we're in person, if we can get back in person at some point. But really our goals are building a common language and understanding among staff. And then the most important thing for year 1 and throughout this process will be support, support, support. That we want to make sure that our teachers feel supported to have conversations with each other, have conversations should they come up in class, and have and help identify maybe even subtle injustices and how we can move past those things. In the end, we're going to look to audit what do we currently do really well and how do we expand those things? What do we want to stop doing? And then what do we want to begin? And so moving to the next slide, we've talked a lot about an equity lens, but what exactly does that mean? And so using the professional development, we start to build that lens, not only for the big rocks of equity, the in-your-face inequities, but often it highlights some of the subtle, unintentional inequities. And how do we remove those barriers for students, for staff? And how do we replace those barriers with the support to move past them? And so when we think about an equity lens, we're thinking about the questions that we may ask as we look at each individual component of what makes up District 75. Whenever we make decisions, we need to start asking ourselves, who are the groups that are affected by this decision? And does it maintain or even does it increase disparities amongst our students and staff? And then if we look at decisions that are made and then we answer the question of who these ideas affect, are we intentionally involving those groups in the decision-making process? And then when we have the barriers to access and we remove them, what supports are we going to put in place where those barriers once were? And so our goal as a committee, and then ultimately will show through in our 3 to 5 year plan, is how do we move towards equity being that lens for everything that we do? Ultimately, the committee would like to see this embedded in what we do and become part of what we do and not something extra. Next slide, please. So just like the literacy, we talked about ensuring that support is sort of wraparound and over multiple years. Looking to as equity as a lens is going to take us some time. And so over this year, we're looking to build that 3 to 5 year plan. It's going to consist of professional development, maybe some opportunities for curriculum development, and then some opportunities for resources and support. The other thing that we're going to be looking to support is the board's work in policy, and also looking at the administrative procedures and looking at our instructional practices. What we're gearing up for is that equity audit in the fall of 2021. We're building the capacity in our leadership group, and to make sure that when we get those audit results, we can create the findings into actionable items. I'm going to have Evelyn talk about the first component of our 3 to 5 year plan, and that is professional development.
In terms of professional development, looking at our 5-year plan, the first year we really would like to strengthen our committee. So make sure that we are continuing our growth, our personal growth through book studies, articles, but we would like also to open it up to other staff members that would be interested in embarking with us into this training on anti-bias and anti-racism courses. We also want to start building that common language that we would use throughout, from preschool throughout in school experience for any child. Years 2 to 5, we would like to embark on staff professional development throughout the whole district. And we would like also to focus on the teaching tolerance, social justice standards, and continue that anti-bias, anti-racism training, everything with the coaching of Yvette Dubiel. So she would continue to work with us throughout this whole process. And we would also like to create that equity tool creation so that everything that we do is based on equity, making sure that everything, all the curriculum that we implement, everything is based on this equity lens that we would like to see everything in the district.
Yeah, so I'm going to focus on 2 things that Evelyn said here, and that is the common language is so important. And just like we do in literacy or in any curricular area, we start with a common language, because when you can name something, then you can start to improve it. And so that's why the common language is so important. And then I'll just touch quickly on the teaching tolerance social justice standards. And actually you can go to the next slide, please, because it kind of leads right into curriculum development. Those social justice standards, what's interesting about them is it always starts with the self, and they're developmentally appropriate for all of our grade levels. So we're not going to get into heavy equity, racism topics until it's developmentally appropriate, and until students and teachers have had ample time to focus on themselves first, because equity work begins with yourself. But when we look at our curriculum development through an equity lens, we need to look at our dual language and our monolingual curriculum, right? And how do we integrate the social justice standards, but how do we integrate ways to get authentic literature, right, in our students' hands? Not necessarily only translations, but how do we make sure that the books that they're reading, they may be in English, but maybe they're written by a Latinx author. We have made a commitment to our teachers this past summer that we're going to be providing professional development on the social justice standards, and then also leverage sort of our own curriculum cycle in this, and that social studies will be coming up for a review after literacy. And so we'll leverage our social studies curriculum review, our work with the social justice standards, our work with literacy to develop some units that are equitable, and so that students can see themselves in the work that they do. Next slide, please. Also in that 3 to 5 year plan, we want to address the resources and support. We want to make sure that everything that we bring in from this point forward promotes our vision of equity. We want to diversify our collections, make sure that there's books for LGBTQ plus students, for books about race, books about socioeconomic classes, books about ableism. You know, it's not just to have, for example, a Black character in a book. We need to make sure that the books that we're bringing in with our diversity have characters that are protagonists in the story as well. We want to continue the work with our outreach programs. And we're hoping that this group, as well as I know Evelyn has talked about Yvette, become part, and we utilize those people as in a coaching capacity. Next slide, please. I know that the board has been discussing some policies in regard to equity. We're here to let the board know that we're here to support the work that you're doing. Evelyn and I, as well as some of our other members, are wanting to get our feet wet, our hands dirty in the work of building equitable policy, but also partnering in that auditing, right? We have policies in place. We want to ask those questions of, when we have a policy that we believe is equitable, we want to ask the question of what groups does this affect? Does it increase disparity between groups, and so on and so forth? And then a resource for the Board of Education for future work. Next slide, please. You know, I mentioned a couple of times, this group is about 6 to 8 weeks old. We're really in the infant stages, if you will, of building a more equitable, a more just environment for our students to learn in. So I think Kevin actually reminded me, since the pandemic started, I've been saying it's about patience and forgiveness, less is more, and love before lessons. I think you heard from Dale and Pat about how our teachers love the students that they work with. I think in this case, it's going to require some patience, that the equity work takes time. We talked about how you have to work within yourself first before you can start to identify some of those injustices that you see outside. And some of those are going to be really big, and some of them are going to be really subtle. But we have to invest in the time to acknowledge and work on both of those. And so we're getting our feet wet. This is going to take time. It's a process. We're planning on 2 more updates to the board in January, February, and then at the end of the year to present the full 3 to 5 year plan. And so with that, I will take any questions.
Hey Dan, this is Freddie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So mine's not really a question. I just want to say, like, on behalf of myself, and I think I can speak for the board, hopefully, that, being the newest member of the board, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to even be part of it is to make a difference in a range or multiple areas. But obviously this one is near and dear to my heart, being part of the community for over 10 years now, being the only minority on the board. I feel like, I can speak a little bit closer, being that it's near and dear to my heart. And, growing up, I faced these same issues that our kids are dealing with today. So I want to commend the district just for taking, this step. I know we're talking about the equity policy, and I think that's very important. Our students are they need to feel like they're included and they're part of the community, right? So, I mean, I can talk about this all day, but my bottom line is thank you. I think we're all here to support, and, if you guys ever need any references from me, or, I know I can be part of the committee just because of the timing aspect. But, thank you. I really appreciate it. So looking forward to you guys developing this plan and presenting it to us.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Thank you.
So this is Wells. In my opinion, we need to have at least an hour or hour and a half workshop with the board and anybody else that wants to attend with. And I'll do one of the things. It's a slight Dr. Is it Dubiel?
Dubiel.
Dubiel, sorry. So getting her name correct would be good. so that we are on the same understanding, in part because some of the materials that I've seen, I think would be fairly controversial in our community. And for instance, on one of the slides, we got the LGBTQ plus, and I guess at what point in time is it appropriate for a school district to be introducing the subject of gender identification and not have the situation like the person in Burlington, Wisconsin, that was talking about race and got a very substantial negative reaction from that. So if we're not going to spend the time and effort as a board to learn about what's being said, and that includes a whole list of different words and acronyms that we probably have thought about, and if we're going to go through this, need to change, then the staff can do it, but I don't know about whether or not, if the board's not serious enough to do that, then I don't know if the board has a lot to say.
So I can respond to, I think there were three things.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just trying to write them down as I'm going. So
All right.
in terms of board learning, yes, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Wells. I think even some of our steering committee would like to take part in that with the board and have it be a joint effort. And yes, Dr. Dubiel would be more than happy to do that. I've asked her to put a proposal together to continue regular coaching, both with the group and then obviously with the board. And she has also some resources that we can use for the board policy work. In terms of the when, and then in terms of the Burlington, Wisconsin thing, I can't stress it enough. We need to focus on supporting and the teacher learning first and building their capacity so that we can have those successful conversations. And that is our first goal this year, as well as a continued thread throughout. And then lastly, the LGBTQ plus curriculum piece and gender identification. Yes, I get that it can be a sensitive topic. I can say that in the Illinois statutes or in the Illinois school code beginning this year, school districts around Illinois need to start discussing the contributions of LGBTQ plus people, both in the world around them, but also in the fight for equality. And so these topics are there for us to be starting the work of finding ways to introduce our students to in developmentally appropriate ways.
And I think if I might add to what Dan was saying, one thing that really struck me from the article is that we're doing things differently. We're providing those supports. We're planning to provide those supports for teachers and make sure that they have the resources, the support, the coaching available to them even before they embark into having these conversations in their classroom. So I think that was one of the goals in our committee, is that we want to be that support to the teacher. So we are embarking on that journey and self-reflection so that then we can provide the supports to teachers so that when these conversations happen, they feel like they have the tools to embark in these conversations.
Would be good.
Hi, guys. This is Lisa. Can you hear me? I'm going to
Yes, thank you.
take my mask off if that's allowed, just so you can hear me in front of me. But I just have an observation more than a question for you guys. And having spent a lot of time looking at materials and the literacy materials, there seems to be a natural kind of commingling of goals, if you want to say it that way, a lot of common areas of intent. We heard a lot about the library inventory, and in going over that material, not only that was provided, but like I said, I was able to talk to Dale yesterday. It seems like there's a very proactive effort to get the books that teachers need for individual students year to year in their hands. So that was kind of something that struck me, that there's a lot of common areas. So it'll be interesting to see how, you know, this all comes together, and is it really different in any way than hopefully we're doing in some of these very, very critical areas. I mean, the literacy things that were presented was a little overwhelming to me. I'll be honest with you. And it was very good to see all of the material that was presented tonight. So that was kind of my only observation around your presentation and how it relates. We have to make sure it relates to our core mission of educating our students.
I would agree with you, and I'll add that a lot of the award-winning books, right? Every year, books get, you know, Caldecott, but there's so many other awards. A lot of these books are having themes of LGBTQ, of racism, of injustice that are occurring in those award-winning books. And then in addition to just the themes of books, you're seeing a lot more authors of color who are winning these awards, which is also part of the mix. It's not just about reading about it, it's about understanding the author's journey along with. So yes, there are lots of places for connections here. Thank you.
And I think the other thing that I think is important, you know, we've heard and read a lot about intentions in the past of implementing this program, that program, and the rigor around, was it implemented correctly? Do we know it succeeds? So that this needs to be subject to the same rigor. You know, how do we know something's been successful? It's not often about feelings. It's often about, and sometimes that is, you know, the goal. But like we saw with the literacy, you know, there needs to be hard results that come out of all these efforts. And I think any additional curriculum and training and programming has to justify itself as well, just like any other one.
We'll make sure that that's in our 3 to 5 year plan.
So I just like to jump in here for a minute. Wells kind of rhetorically asked the question of whether or not the board is willing to put in the time and effort to implement this, and whether or not we're in agreement on the trajectory. And I think there is some differences of opinion out here, and I think there's some concern. I think this committee has kind of already taken on a life of its own. There's my understanding, you know, again, I keep going back to this, but this all started with a declaration that was floating around to various school districts that somebody was encouraging school districts to adopt. And we chose not to adopt that and instead create a policy. And my understanding is we're still in the process of creating that policy, and the committee is offered to aid in the creation of that policy. But all of a sudden we're talking about 3 to 5 year plans and hiring on consultants for that entire time and all of everything that goes with that. And I don't know that we are of one mind when it comes to moving forward with this. I know I have concerns.
What are your concerns? I guess I'm confused. I mean, I know that the issue of equity is of emerging popularity, for lack of a better term, but I think it's an important one in order to address a lot of the things. And, you know, for example, the seminar that's on Friday that I don't know how many of us are attending with the IASB, you know, one of the keynote speakers is about, you know, equity. And so there has been a lot of discussion about that, on that, and that we have addressed and discussed. And I thought we had agreed as a board to at least proceed with some sort of a training. And until this conversation, I wasn't aware that we had large differences of opinions or that we weren't all on the same page. So I guess that is something that does need to be discussed, but you know, the other issue is timing of when this type of a training would take place. We do have a number of seats that are up for election this next year, and I think that that has to be discussed as well. I don't know, you know, mine's not one of them, but I don't know what intentions of, you know, all of our board are, and if we are going to engage in this type of a training, does it make sense to wait until after a new board is seated? Could be the same board we have sitting here, it could be a new one, I don't know, but that also probably has to be discussed as part of timing, as if you're going to have a whole board participate in a training. And even really the crafting of a policy, if the board is not just rubber stamping it, but is going to be a part of that, that's another factor to consider.
I think I'm speaking for Yvette or whoever we use. I think if we did a training now, we would be able to repeat the training should we have a new board members seated, to ensure that there was continuity in the work that was being done.
Okay, well, let me just ask, Chrissy started off with a question about, did Rob want to talk about your concerns? Because Chrissy just kept talking and we never got back.
I tend to do that.
There's a variety of concerns. I've spoken to people who have attempted to do this in other districts, and you know, like it or not, as well as pointed out, there's certain topics in this umbrella of equity that are can be controversial. And one of my concerns is who is ultimately speaking for the board. That's the big one. Again, the expense and the time and effort involved in implementing this over 3 to 5 years, when our kids aren't even in the classroom right now and their testing grades are tanking at the moment. I think there's other things we should be focusing on. Again, I guess it goes down, or it comes back to who's speaking for the board and what they're saying.
So I don't speak for the board. I let the board speak for themselves. I hear what you're saying about test results, assessment results. I think at the heart of the work that we want to do in equity, we need to look at our outcomes. And if we disaggregate our data, we can know what our outcomes are going to be before kids even take their test, based on the color of their skin or based on their socioeconomic status. And so when you see a disparity in groups in achievement, we have to be able to look at our systems and processes and practices to ensure that we're offering equal access and opportunity for all of our students. And so I think that's what makes this work an imperative for this group, as well as others who are not on the steering committee, but see this as important work that is part of the achievement, improving achievement.
I don't think, Dan, anybody's saying we don't look at our systems. I mean, we're doing it right now with.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think, like Rob said, maybe the conundrum is, you know, I just did some quick math. I think you guys spent 90 hours of total time dedicated. If you took all of you times 6 hours of training, that's 90 hours of time And I think Rob is asking, is that the most efficient use of time to get the results that we all want? I think if I might have understood Rob correctly.
Yeah, yes, I understand that was the question. I believe, I can speak for myself, that in order to approve achievement, we have to do it in a multifaceted way. We're going to provide some strong programs through, for example, the literacy or through Big Ten math or any of those other things. But we also need to be able to support our staff in identifying intentional, unintentional bias, so that doesn't become part of the reason why students don't succeed at the rate we would like them to succeed.
Purpose in your group. So I think we have to, maybe that'll become more clear in further presentations, what your goals are on the teaching coaching side and what your goals are on the curriculum side. So that may be where
Okay.
discussion has to happen.
I didn't catch, Lisa, I'm sorry. You had.
Another concern I have here is that the plan you've laid out calls for an audit a year plus down the road. And I always thought you did an audit at the start of something to determine what you were doing right and what you needed to improve on. But this, and again, I feel like this is a case of putting the cart before the horse here. We're going to implement this program. We have a solution. We don't know if we have a problem, but we have a solution. So we're gonna implement this, and then we're going to decide later on whether or not we have the problem or where the problem lies.
Thank you, Rob. I do understand. Yes, in a typical school year, we would want to have the audit first, just like we did with our literacy. I think being in remote makes it a little more difficult. I think with all of our other initiatives going on with literacy, and then we have our dual language task force going on simultaneously, that's just where we could fit it in to get some of that work done. That doesn't mean that there's not additional work and professional learning that can be taking place with our teachers. We're not looking to do large scale professional development until after the audit, but we definitely want, I think our teachers, judging from the survey results, our teachers are reading about it, our teachers are watching YouTube videos and podcasts and vodcasts about it. And so we want to make sure that we are providing support for teachers as they're doing that work in the short term, get to the audit, and then have our plan for the future.
So maybe I can step in a second here. What I'd like to be able to do is the work that we started, we've been working through equity since I came on board. It was roughly 2 months ago, and Christy referenced it. We were around the table in the boardroom and asked every board member if you wanted to go through and developing an educational equity policy. Every one of you that was in attendance said yes. Based off that very clear directive that you provided, we felt empowered to go through, and our equity committee was developed. And that's why we're instituting and going through and doing the training to help people understand where we are personally. So then when it comes time to do the audit, looking at things, we are better prepared to do that because it can be sensitive. Just like we mentioned earlier.
Kevin, just to clarify, we gave you a clear directive to create a policy. That's different from creating an equity committee and moving forward with everything that you've described this evening.
Well, I guess there'd be a difference of where we view roles. It's not the board's privy to inform me if I can develop a committee to do some of this work, if we've already got it budgeted. So I wasn't asking for permission to be able to have a committee form. timing wise, just like we heard with literacy, if there's ever an opportunity for us to be able to divulge and to go into this topic, now would be it. Our staff has come forward. They said they're wanting to sit on the committee and want to be able to help provide insight on it. I don't know where we can exactly get with it, but I know if we got people invested in it and they're willing to put extra time into it and all the time they need, then to me, that's something worthwhile that we need to explore. So I do find a value in this. I do think it needs to be supported. We've heard from our staff. We try to take their lead on things. So I think I'm looking at it from two different lenses right now. From an administrative standpoint, I would still encourage my admin, my staff to keep working through this because this is important work to work through. I think as a board, if you're seeing a different direction in regards to policy development, what you want to do, I think that's the conversation to be able to have and to clarify it. And then we'll go from there. Where are we as a board?
So I think Christy makes some good points about probably having different membership, and the election would be, and they would be seated when, in May? Is that right?
Yeah, 28 days after the election, they've got to be seated. So
Okay. End of April for early May. So to me, it seems to make some sense to withhold future activities until after that. And again, I would only do it if whoever's on the board at that time, you have at least a majority that says that they're willing to spend the time and effort to learn about it.
Somebody.
I'm willing to participate in a training seminar, as we said before, and I think that it's good information to have. And I think that the committee that's existing should keep doing the work that they're talking about. That doesn't mean they're going to be making large sweeping changes. They want to report back to us, at future meetings, and I think that they should continue to do that. We do need, as a board, to decide how we want to proceed with the policy part and a training. I think both are good ideas, personally, but I'm only one of 7.
I think that we should continue forth with the committee. I think Dan made some good points that if we are looking to improve in some of these areas with our test scores and everything, I think that this equity piece is an important part to that. And I think as a board, I think it would be very helpful for us to go through some type of training so that we know more about this and how it links up with the performances of our kids.
Yeah, I've always agreed with Wells's idea. I think, whether what the timing of it is kind of, I think, up to debate, but to have some sort of introduction to what you all are doing, seeing, and experiencing with your coach or your consultant.
I think the work should still go on. I mean, I think regardless of, yes, I know the board is eventually going to be responsible for approving the policy and making sure that it's aligned with, big picture, who's going to be here, 6-8 months from now. But ultimately, the work itself is very important. It could be part of, the literacy. Lisa, you referenced it earlier. Again, I can speak from it personally. It's not empathy. It's not, I went through it, right? I was at a disadvantage, point blank, from anyone else that I went to school with. So regardless of what anyone wants to say, I know that for a fact, right? So I think the work should continue to be done. whoever's here in 6, 8 months, whatever it is in May, they can make that decision as a team and decide if what the committee has done in that time is worth implementing and creating a policy. That's same as Christy said, I'm one of 7. So that's just my opinion.
I'm on the same side as most other people that have talked, I think. I feel like this is an important enough topic that we can't just put it off until May. There's a few months before now in May that I feel like the committee needs to keep going. They need to keep doing their work and planning. And I mean, I don't think it would hurt the people on the board to have a workshop or some training and this type of thing. Kurt and I had some equity training last spring at our school district, and it was very enlightening and in some certain aspects incredibly eye-opening about about myself and how I look at things. So I think it would be important in this day and age for us to continue on with this. Does that give you enough direction? Yes, sir. Okay, any more questions for Dan or Evelyn about equity? I think we're pretty much done, yes?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Evelyn.
Thank
We're gonna
you.
have Student Services, Jamie.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about the Director of Linguistic Programs. As you know, last school year, we had the position of the bilingual coordinator in our district, and Anais Diaz filled that position for us. This fall, as the school year was beginning, Anais stepped away from the position and we had the vacancy. And so we determined the best course for this year was to continue along with my background being as a bilingual special education teacher and a bilingual gifted teacher, and my ability to serve in the role of the Director of Language Programs, to step in and support that role for the district. And so that's what we've been doing for this school year. And in going back even to last school year and working directly with the coordinator and with Dan and with the team, I had the opportunity to speak with staff and again, look more systematically at what was going on within our dual language program, within our two-way immersion and our one-way immersion programs, and just learning from the staff that the areas of concern were professional development, the consistency in the professional development, materials and resources, and visioning. So as has been stated before, in our 5th year of having the two-way immersion program, we have had 5 different administrators touch the program and be kind of the oversight for the program, varying from building principal to coordinator to director of curriculum to myself. So just a variance in the administrator role of who's overseeing kind of the programming and supporting the programming. And so for our staff, that's resulted, in some feeling that there's some, not a lot of consistency there for them in terms of being able to provide that support to staff and then the follow through and those types of support. So this fall, we were able to have a bilingual coffee where we invited everyone from the district to come and again, sought feedback, and those same 3 trends rose to the top: professional development, materials, vision. I was able to, with Dale Truding and with Glenda Juarez and with the building principals, meet with every TWE team over the course of the last week and a half, and individual grade level TWE teams, to get feedback on exactly what supports they felt were needed and how they could have all the tools and resources they need for their program to continue to be successful and to grow. And something else we look at is this program rolls up every year. So it's currently with it currently being in 4th grade, is that each year when it rolls up, when we look historically, the professional development that and what that kind of package of instructional support to the teacher new to TWE, what that has looked a little bit different from year to year. So again, wanting to really provide that stability and that consistent support. And then with, you know, so many benefits to our grade level centers. One piece of that is as the program moves from building to building, there's lots of administrators, or moves up in the building, there's lots of administrators supporting the program. So also looking that having a director for linguistic programs would allow us to provide that support to our administrative leadership so that they kind of empower that leadership and understanding of the two-way immersion program and enriching, already all of them having a really nice foundation, but just enriching and providing that support district-wide. So with me covering that role right now, it's been great. It's my passion, it's my love. You know, again, having been that bilingual gifted and bilingual special ed teacher, I love it. But with kind of my umbrella being in special education and English learners for both the districts, the time that I'm able to provide that support this year, it's been really great making it work, but just looking at it from a long-term stability and support, and having that person who can repeatedly be there and really look critically at our data in terms of our program within our programming, and as the programming rolls up, and you know, when students are typically exposed to 2 languages at once, where we see that spurt and that growth is later in their elementary career. So really having someone in the position that understands dual language programming, understands like multilingual language development, someone that can really support the whole system is what we would like to look at. And so moving from a coordinator role to a director role would really allow us, again, bringing in someone with that level of experience who's had, you know, at least 5 years of teaching experience in that program, and hopefully some administrative background, hopefully fluent in Spanish, and a strong understanding of best practices to support our English learners. And then also just being able to look at a variety of, this person being able to look at a variety of assessment data and focus on tangible areas for improvement and help with our focus. And so something else that we're doing this school year is our linguistic programs task force, which that we're looking at the data and we're having focus groups, and we're really looking at where we are right now and what we need to do moving forward. And so this person that would fill this role would be able to assist us as a district in that trajectory and have that stability and support. So again, supporting teachers, supporting administrators, and providing you know, helping with the best practices, and then also working with our families and our bilingual parent advisory committee, and really, again, just having that focus. And so in doing so, what we're looking to ask for is to kind of elevate that position from a coordinator role to a director role. It could be an 11 or 12-month position, and then by increasing it to the level of and being able to have our reach and have it out there, and again, seeking out candidates that have that level of experience is really what we want to do. And then further later on down the road, this could eventually be a shared service. So with our dual language program is currently rolling into the middle school, and our one-way immersion program is in the middle school. We have 2 of the feeder schools, for example, that go into the high school that their dual language program has reached 8th grade now. So as these programs roll into, as our two-way immersion or dual language programs roll into the high school, we would be able to potentially look at how this could possibly be a shared service position as well. I think those are the points I wanted to cover. Are there any questions for me?
Shared service. Can you elaborate why it wouldn't be feasible right now to be a shared service?
Sure. I think right now with where our program is at, our program is currently in the where it's at in the elementary, and again hasn't made that surge into the rolling into the high school yet. And I think looking too at where the high school is at, I oversee the EL program there at the high school as well, and have a department chair that supports me with their other roles. So they have other roles. They're not a bilingual staff member. And so eventually this would be a true benefit to both districts for the consistency. And again, it just not necessarily just being there yet for this current time.
Oh, maybe on a similar vein, would it make sense to seek a full-time consultant for a more defined time period until the D75 program does matriculate through the middle school and end up with students going to the high school?
Wells, are you saying in lieu of having a coordinator or a director?
Yes.
Okay, so I think currently we have right now Amy Mosqueda from Adelante that consults with us. A challenge with that would be to find a consultant that would be able to give us that amount of time and support and regular coaching. I think that would be a challenge, and I don't know, costs offsetting one another. I don't know that that package would work as well as having someone committed to us full time. To be honest, I think we'd get more, we'd have more to leverage and more consistency with the person if they were with us every day. When you kind of do like, again, I haven't done like a cost analysis, but I think that would behoove us to have someone with us consistently. Right now, we do have a lot of great support from Amy, and I think we're going to be going through our bilingual task force. Our first meeting is actually Monday after, at the end of the school day. And so I think that going through that process, we'll have some good outcomes and some clarity on, based on our student demographic and our population, what makes the most sense for us as far as, you know, there's different like linguistic allocations. We have like a 50-50 model. There could be an 80-20 and a 90-10, and we have a 2-teacher model and all those kinds of facets. Like we're looking to look deeply at that and see what's best for our programming. And so the goal would be when someone, this is currently a vacant position, right? So it's been an approved position. It's sitting vacant this year. So the idea, but we want to elevate it. So the idea would be that this person coming in would be privy to all of that research that we have done this school year, all the information we gained to help implement the outcomes that we want to see. Implement the steps to get to the outcomes we want to see, excuse me. So
If that person's not involved with developing the plan, does it not make it more difficult to then implement the plan?
I understand, but I plan to be like closely integrated all along. This is my
Appreciate that.
I understand what you're saying, though, Wells. I understand.
Well, again, because as if I'm reading things correctly, how we've been trying to implement the dual language program has not been as effective as we would have liked. So if we have to make major changes in that, that's, I don't know.
Although Wells, one of the things I can think of is that since the TWE program right now is in 4th grade.
That's correct.
Right? So we still have 4 years before we really complete it through our system. My concern would be using a contractor for that long of a period of time. We're probably going to be setting ourselves up for a turnover of people in that period of time, which has already been one of the problems that's been expressed, that we've had kind of a turnover with in the lack of continuity. And I would think that it makes more sense for us to get our District 75, I guess, model perfected with a director before we go, trying to share it with the high school and then roll it up. That's just a thought that I had.
That makes, reasonably good sense. So we eliminated a director before, trying to reduce the number of administrators that we have. We went to a dual language coach, which then, got changed back. Some of the changes in the principals are either there was a retirement and somebody else left because of a different situation. So yes, those changes occurred. Some of them were at the behest, if you will, of the school district. Some of them were at the decision, rightly or wrong, of board members. So, that's, I guess, that's the other part of the background. And then just to throw on top of it, I don't know if you listened to what Governor Pritzker had to say, but seems to me like it's unlikely we're going to have more funding as opposed to potentially have a cut in funding.
Kate, can you give some feedback on that?
Actually, I was just trying to unmute myself for that very fact. So one of the things that we are in a great position, we're in a great position as opposed to other school districts in that we have planned for this type of a situation to happen. So whereas other school districts right now are scrambling to get their budget and to be able to make the end of the year with these quote unquote cuts, which we don't know what they're going to be yet, we are actually recognizing the revenue for last year, this year, and this year, next year. So we're one year ahead of everyone else in terms of preparing for what Governor Pritzker is talking about. So this is not going to impact us this year, but it gives us a great opportunity to, instead of putting out fires, to proactively plan for next year. And again, I tend to take a very conservative approach with our funding from the state because I got burned by them a long time ago. And so I think we're really in a good position for next year because I always keep our general state aid flat in our 5-year financial projections. And I generally use 3 of our 4 payments in our 5-year financial projections. So again, we're in a great place. I'm not saying we're not going to feel something, but I think it's going to be significantly less than other school districts.
Can anyone address, I guess, Jamie or T or Kevin? One of the issues has been, we've had a couple people leave probably because of money the last few years that have been in that position. So am I right in saying that moving it from a coordinator to a director position will help that?
Yes, yes. So we were looking at a change in the salary structure, moving it from a 10-month coordinator position to a more extended position as in that director role. So again, looking for someone with more experience who's ready to move into the footing of a director role as opposed to a coordinator role, and having a commensurate salary then.
Director of Linguistic Programs, that just sounds expensive.
It's fancy. We're fancy.
If you had a chance to look at the responses to board questions, one of the things that we've done is tried to make this comparable and competitive, and you're going to hear that from me time and time again as this district tries to become comparable and competitive with its salary structure for all classes of staff. And what we did was looked at how to make this comparable and competitive to those school districts in our area. So we figured out a per EL student cost average for the districts in our area and utilize that versus our EL enrollment to determine what a good range would be. And it just so happens it fell right in the middle of what Jamie had recommended as a salary structure as well. So again, I think we've done a good job doing the analysis as well as backing that up with, you know, a range itself.
Amy, how do you envision recruiting for this job? If this is approved, is this something you're going to start right away so you can take the time you need to find the right candidate, engage who you need to get candidates in front of you?
Exactly. So we have, you know, there's a nice network of EL coordinators and directors, and with the consultants we work with, like a network, we have like a think tank that has, you know, virtual chats and email groups and meetings. So working within the network, in fact, as I was putting together the duties and responsibilities, I worked with that network to see what some of their roles and responsibilities were in their unique roles. And so working in that direction and different posting arenas with the universities, with the IRC, the Illinois Resource Center, that provides a lot of English learner PD and has a lot of resources and supports to school districts and professional development. So again, and then within my network and the networks of my colleagues, we would like to get this starting the sooner the better, which is why we wanted to bring this to you early this year so that we could get it posted. And, you know, there tends to be way more candidates in December and January than there are in March, for example. So that's a great question.
And would it be the case that that person would probably become on board next school year? Because if they're a quality ethical person, they wouldn't want to leave in the last quarter of their current school year.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is all for August. This isn't for prior. I'm confident in my, I'm confident that with all the support of my colleagues on the administrative team that we're good for this school year. We got it. So yeah, this would be for next fall.
Jamie, who does this person report to?
This person would report to me. Any other
And
questions?
because they have a type 75, I presume that they could do teacher evaluations?
They could, yeah, they have, we would look for a candidate that would be able to do the teacher evaluations. Absolutely. And, you know, I think that's a huge benefit too with the linguistic background and things like that, you know, just the fact that if they're able to understand that Spanish and see those lessons and from that lens, that would be really great. So yeah, we definitely would want them to be able to support evaluations.
Okay, anything else for Jamie?
I'm just curious, is that a certification to be able to do that Wells just referenced, to do evaluations?
So there is, we experienced this last school year with our new administrators. With our new coordinators and administrator roles, there's a professional development course. You can take it through a few different ways, but it allows you to be an evaluator of certified staff. And for us with our district adapted template, and you go through a specific training course, and then it's one of your certifications with the State Board of Ed and your certifications.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report. All right, let's talk about some numbers. So coming back to tonight, just want to go through an update on what we're seeing with the metrics in relation to COVID, with the positivity incident rate, and come to you with some recommendations first for completing the rest of this calendar year through 2020 and looking ahead to the new year, 2021. So as we start looking at the data, we're getting more of it. Some of it's timely, some of it's not. Look at it at multiple levels. Start at the state level, bring it down to the county level, and then look at where we are for our community. And it's just data. So they're just data points for us to kind of look to how we're comparing. One of the things you're going to see tonight is just how much it's changing. We all know, if we don't know, right now we are on an increasing trajectory. The positivity and the incident rates. So next slide. So that's what we should be seeing. So what the state has done recently, they've also started to come out with some more school-based percentages on cases. So this first one are the potential exposures within either a public or private school in the last 30 days. So the number for the state equates to 10.5%. What that tells us is 10.5% of the total number of exposures that have occurred in the last 30 days have occurred at a private or a public school place. For our region specifically, we're Region 9. That includes McHenry County, in addition to us at Lake. It's been a total of 6.26% of the total number of cases in Lake County have been traced to some extent for exposure at a private or a public school. So all that's telling us is right now we're below what the state average is when you compare those two. So I'm looking at. So next slide. The next one, outbreak locations. There's a change that took place roughly a week ago. Outbreaks used to be considered 2 or more exposures in a similar location within the previous 14 days. Instead of 2 exposures in a similar location, they've increased it to 5. So now an outbreak is defined as 5 individuals in a similar location that have been in the same place within the 14 days, okay? So this data point is just purely public schools. Private schools were removed. So when you look at the state in the last 30 days, 6.14% of the cases for outbreaks have been connected to a school setting. When you look at Region 9, it's 12.1 of the total cases in Lake County are connected to a school setting in the last 30 days. Now, the thing you got to look at, the numbers are very low. So 12%, I mean, there's only been a total of 4 cases in the last 30 days connected to a school.
Outbreak, you mean outbreak?
I'm sorry, outbreak, yes. Making sure you guys are awake. Thank you. So yes,
the last 30 days. So it is a relatively low number when you compare it. Next slide, please. So then breaking it down and going to our local data, this was as of November 9th, when I last done the document. Looking at the county at the top compared to where we are in our district. The numbers have been updated. So for Lake County, as of the 16th, the incident rate is 74.4. So that gives you perspective that since November 9th to the 16th of the type of increase they've seen, from 52 to 74, basically. What we try to do is look at where's that at for us for the district. So back on the 9th, we were at 52.6, very similar to the county. The point to look at though is county and the metrics are saying they want us at 13.9 or less, according to Lake County Health Department, to start returning more to school. The difference being when you look at where we are right now, as of the 16th, we're at 71.8. So we're a little bit below the county, but we're at 71.8. That's still high. When you look at the numbers, October 27th, the positivity rate for the county was 9.02. It's 12.99 as of the 16th. Positivity for our district, it went up slightly. On the 27th of October, it was 12.75. It's currently at 12.87, just below what the county is. So you're seeing the trends there where our community is mirroring more what the county's at least right now. Next slide, please.
Dr. Myers,
Sure.
when you say District 75, does that really mean 60060?
It does. That's just our zip code, because all of our students are within that zip code. Yep.
But there are other schools, students in that zip code as well. Is the point I'm getting at.
Other schools being,
Like Fremont, District 76.
that could go to those schools.
Because,
Yes.
because it's under the umbrella of 60060.
Yes. Correct. Yes. So then what we look at are going back to the dashboard that we have. So we are currently in phase 1 because you go by the lowest phase based off the metric. So the incident rate, we're over 14. We've been over 14 for more than 7 consecutive days. I believe it's been since October 16th was the last time we were below. This, since we last have done it, this has now moved over to phase 1 because it's been more than 7 days now that we've received the updated data. So these 2 phases are still in phase 1 now. So that means that's where we are from a learning mode. Number of testing days, it's still at the phase 4, which is fully coming back into the session because they're still saying it's taking less than 3 days to get test results. Although anecdotally, you talk to people that are being tested, it's taking more than 3 days depending on where they go. So I would anticipate that number may move, but as of right now, it hasn't. It's staying below the 2. So when you look at it from a school district standpoint right now, everything we're seeing is lining up with phase 1. Next slide, please. So these numbers, these are the old numbers. So I gave you the new ones, but this gives you an idea. So the incident rate, we'd already had at least 7 days being in phase 1, higher than the 14, clearly listed there. The middle one, the positivity, we are at 6 days in a row consecutively higher than the number we needed. We were just waiting for one more day, and it did trend that way. So when you take those things into account, we're still in the phase where phase 1, and we know now on Friday we'll be going into tier 3 mitigation as a county, which things are getting more restrictive then. The thing with that is the county has communicated that a lot of those don't apply to school districts. They keep saying that, but they're also trying to have us make decisions to help also support that as well. So I think that's a perplexing place that puts us as school districts. And it comes down to what are our mitigation protocols with how we get people in and out of the building. The other change you're going to see if you're following the metrics, I know some people like following the metrics. Well, about a month ago, okay, when the metrics first came out in August, one of the indicators was hospitalizations. Roughly 4 weeks in, they removed it. And they said they removed it because that was really only a Lake County metric that didn't have any connection to schools. Today, or as yesterday, hospitalizations with the number of people going in is back on their metric list. We need to find out why. Hopefully we'll have an answer tomorrow for that when we meet with the Lake County Health Department. It's another change, that's all. So what we're looking to be able to do, planning ahead. When I'm coming to the board, we've been looking at the options of being able to come back to the hybrid mode at some point. At this rate, what I'd like to be able to say in talking with our steering committee, which consists of representation from our union membership, a couple board members that were participating in that conversation as well for some consistency, just saying we're going to stay in remote through December because it doesn't look like the numbers are going to decline. And I think a big part of the question is why would we want to do that? There needs to be some consistency right now, just flat out. That's where we're going to be. And we'll keep watching the numbers before we move forward. The second one is trying to give enough notice. For one, it helps people prepare, but I'd like to recommend that our staff return to the building for January 11th, 2021. The reason for the 11th and not the 4th, the holidays that for some people, but it's the winter break. Families are getting together. We want to have at least a week's time in between. So if somebody did come in contact with for potential COVID, they had a week in between. If they had symptoms, they could stay home, notify before we bring staff in the building. Why staff in the building? Because when you look at even the mitigation, we believe because most of our staff have their own space, we can have the safety protocols in place to be able to make sure that environment is secure for them. It helps them with acclimating to those procedures. I think one of the things that we found for our staff that have been in the building, and I'll say for my own self, even when I first started going back into buildings back earlier in the fall, it took me a while to get used to putting my mask on, hand sanitizer, washing my hands, keeping a distance from people. It's just that natural reaction. I want to go and shake people's hands. That I could finally settle down a little bit and I got more comfortable for myself being in that environment. Ultimately, and I think everybody's been very clear with this, our goal is to get our kids back in the building. It's got to be, because we know the number one way to have the biggest impact on our students is for our staff to be in front of our students, the teachers in the classrooms with the kids. I think everyone will tell you that no matter what. And as we look at that, we know remote's working. We're getting better at it. I think we need to keep improving it. It's working for some, but it's not working for all students and staff. So we've got to be able to try to find that balance. And I think our team's been very creative in looking at that. I think the other thing is we're not leading the way with asking staff to be in the building. There are other elementary districts that have been in session since August. They're showing that this can work. And I have full confidence in our buildings and grounds team and our staff to be able to follow the protocols that we have in place, keep the cleaning measures going, that it's going to provide us a good environment to be able to provide education for our students and for our staff to be comfortable in. I think for all of us in the planning piece, it's important that if we set a date, we understand that date so we can plan accordingly. What it'll allow us to do from an organizational standpoint is get feedback from the staff to make sure who is going to be available to be in the classroom. If somebody needs accommodations, to be able to work through our HR department. Once we've got those numbers, that tells us exactly what type of substitute numbers we'll need so that we can plan accordingly. Also, for our staff, we're able to get information from our staff on who may need child supervision support. So we're looking at the option of being able to have a place for our staff to have the children come in during those teaching times to be able to support them in our building so that they don't need the daycare if that becomes something that's an inhibitor for them. Because ultimately, our goal is to get our staff in front of our kids. And if that can help in these unique circumstances, I believe that's something that we should do. The second part is really preparing for the second part of the year with the hybrid start, seeing what that looks like. Next month, you're going to hear from Principal Drake and Fergus about what they're looking at for the hybrid, because they've got some tweaks they wanted to share that they think will improve upon it. And to be able to have that ready to go, because one of the things we need to do is make sure our families are still wanting to be in a hybrid, confirming, do they want to have a hybrid or a remote plan for their child? So we need to make sure that's finalized. And then we've been doing this, but I think it goes back to saying the professional development that we need for our staff. We need to keep asking what do they need and to where they're comfortable. So it's getting those put in place to make sure that they do feel comfortable with how that learning mode will go. The two bottom ones, as we plan ahead, I've started conversations with two different doctors, talking about one with working with us about helping with procedures and protocols related to COVID and then with mitigation, being available to work with our nurses as cases come up or how to best handle those scenarios, being a resource for our staff during faculty meetings to go through some of the maybe myths that we hear about COVID and the facts. So we understand that better, being available for us at board meetings as we try to implement different protocols so that you as board members understand the differences also that they may be seeing in the medical profession. On top of that, we are exploring additional testing. Our district has applied with the CLIA waiver to be able to get some of the antigen tests. So the county's supposed to be getting 10,000 of those a week from the state. Once we've got our number, our CLIA number, we're going to be able to then report that to Lake County, and then we should start receiving those tests. And we'll be working with our nurses to be able to make sure that we're able to distribute and get those used as needed. So those are the last two things we want to try to do, is at least getting prepared for January. Those are the key things that we all have to do is going and planning ahead. And we've been talking with our committee structure that we have to be able to make this work. Question. Okay. The next one is the III. Move to that. So this year it's a virtual conference. There are 2 speakers and then 4 different videos that board members are able to participate in. The purpose of tonight is making sure we know who plans on attending or not, and how we'd like to maybe split up who sees which videos prior to the event. Because what I'd like us to be able to do, or like you to be able to do, is at our December meeting, be able to follow up with the summer. So at the virtual panel session, it starts off with the keynote speaker on how to deconstruct racism, and I can't read the rest of it. Followed by then the 4 live presentations, almost 1 an hour. So the great opportunity. Great opportunity, the 21st century learning through community engagement, overcoming generational poverty, empowering students to support peers regarding mental health, and empowering every student every day. So right now, I guess what I'm asking is just for you as a collective group, who plans on attending the virtual conference? If you do, if you are planning on, what did you intend to participate in? And that's sharing with your colleagues. So if we need to divide and conquer, we can.
I'm attending.
Although I did just receive 2 notices of motion this morning that I now have to appear in court for a little bit initially. So I may not be able to show up until those are done, which could be 10 o'clock. But my plan was initially, I had blocked it off my calendar to be there all day, but
I'm going also, does anyone know, do the live presentations overlap or are they separate?
I believe they're separate. From what I looked at on the IASB website today, I think there's only really one track. Usually there's 4 tracks all in, but not this year.
I was going to go to everything. I might have some issues in the middle because I have some class supervisions, but I'll have my earbuds in case I need to listen. Okay.
This is Wells. I'm not attending that. I did sign up for the webinar, I think is Friday, regarding equity, I think.
Yeah, that's the one I signed up for too. Different than this.
Yeah.
I'm on Friday, correct? This is all Friday.
So this is December 15th.
Oh, December. Yeah.
Huh?
Friday the 20th.
Yeah, 20th.
No, this is this Friday, the 20th.
That is.
Oh, no, yeah. 15 board meeting report out. Yes, sorry.
It's my first go around, so yeah, I blocked off the whole day.
Okay. Very good. Well,
We're going on Thursday. So,
While we're on this subject, do you want me to talk about the delegation thing that was last Saturday, or do you want to wait until next month when we're reporting about everything?
if you don't mind, why don't we wait till December?
Not a problem.
Because we got the summary, so we could forward those to everybody so you can read them ahead of time.
Not a problem. Thanks.
Well, so speaking of that, is Freddie, are you getting notices from the association?
Yes.
Okay, so that seems like that's a higher priority.
Although I get the emails, but Anna is very good about sending the email out to all of us when she gets them. So we should be all getting the same information anyway through Anna, if not through IASB directly.
Okay, then last topic, Lisa, if you wanted to have an update on policy 712?
Well, we kind of
discussed
discussed it, and I was just gonna suggest if somebody can't make one of these trainings, there's one Thursday online. Free. I think right up time. I had contacted people who were professionals in the area of equity. One responded right away and would be willing to talk to us. The common thing they both asked the people I reached out to was they wanted a little more direction of what we expected of them. You know, what were we engaging them to do? So that was kind of part of the board work that needed to happen. Decide, you know, to go have more people, or instead of Yvette, you know, who do we want to have come talk to us? The one person is a doctorate in the area of education and who has specialized in equity. She's also a community member. The other woman I knew from more the work setting, work trainings that go on, and she indicated that she could be appropriate, but she was going to reach out to her network for people who specialize in educational policies and the type of training and coaching we're talking about. So I can kind of put them on hold. So I was kind of curious what we might want to do with that. Or did we definitely, for consistency, want to schedule something with Yvette to understand what the committee was using? You know, I guess in theory, we could hear from Yvette and then engage somebody else specifically to work with the board for a different perspective. I didn't get to the point of talking about billable hours, rates and things like that. I do that if it's, you know, something.
I think you want some consistency and guidelines. I think we can work with Dan Schwartz and look at what they put together. So we're comparing apples to apples,
Mhm.
and we can provide that to them. And
Yeah,
then,
no, that would be great. I mean, I think like anything, we need to be open to, you know, have a selection of professionals that we're going to engage in.
great. Great. Mr. President, floor is yours.
October 20th, regular board meeting minutes, personnel report, and the annual renewal list, FOIA requests. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. St. Clair. Can we get the board members back on the screen, please? Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Tully,
Aye.
St. Clair,
Aye.
DuPont,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Price,
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to move on to the board action items. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to adopt the 2020 aggregate tax levy and all resolutions as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly,
Christie, could you move the paper more towards the middle? We can't really hear you.
okay. Holly,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
St. Clair,
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. DuPont,
Aye.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to hire Director of Linguistic Programs in the 2021-2022, sorry, for the 2021-2022 school year.
I will second.
Second by Mrs. Fingerhut. Please, Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Price,
No.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
DuPont,
No.
St. Clair.
Aye.
I move that the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to finish the first term of the 2021 school year and the week of January 4th, 2021 in remote learning, with staff returning on January 11th, 2021 to the building to conduct remote learning from their classrooms. Students may return to the buildings the week of January 19th, 2021 in a hybrid setting pending our community data.
Second.
Second by Gallego. Yes, Christie.
The only change I would propose is rather than saying the first term, because we're on a trimester system, so we just completed our first trimester last Friday. So I maybe just completing the calendar year, is that, or?
or just take out, that was my only comment, just because the first term doesn't seem to apply to our school calendar.
I'm going to amend my motion to read, yeah, I'm not sure what phrase it is. Or is it like a natural phrase?
Would it be complete the calendar year of 2021?
2020.
Oh, you
How about continue remote learning through 12/31?
Or just through the week of January 4th, like it says,
Yeah.
but just, I don't mean to be difficult. I was just trying to be accurate.
I agree with you. I move the Board of Education, Monroe Elementary School District 75, continue the school year through January 4th, 2021 in remote learning, with staff returning on January 11th, 2021 to the building and to conduct remote learning from their classrooms. Students may return to the buildings the week of January 19th, 2021 in a hybrid setting pending our community data. Thank you. Second by Mr. Gallegos. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly,
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
DuPont,
No.
Fingerhut, aye. St. Clair,
Aye.
Friess,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Okay, I move that we go into executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employees of the public body.
Second.
Second by Mr. Price. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly,
Aye.
Friess,
Aye.
Gallegos,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Erickson,
Aye.
DuPont,
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
9:59 p.m. It's live. Okay, everyone can still hear us? We are back live. Okay, I move that we approve the October 20th, 2020 executive session minutes.
Don't you have to call it back to order and take a roll again? I'm sorry, I'm just following the tally sheet I'm given.
That's been our practice lately. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't have it, so that's why I always skip it.
Okay,
Right.
Secretary,
Yeah.
please call the attendance roll.
okay. Holly, St.
Present.
Clair. Yeah, St. Clair.
Present.
Okay, Gallegos.
Present.
All right, Friess.
Here, just to be different.
Okay, Fingerhut here. Erickson,
Here.
DuPont.
Here and present.
Thank you. I'm going to say 10:09 since that was a little bit later. Yeah, go.
Okay, I would entertain a motion about approving the executive session minutes.
Trying to find it. I will move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the executive session minutes for October 20th, 2020.
Second.
Second by Mr. Erickson. Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut, aye. Erickson,
Aye.
DuPont,
Aye.
Gallegos,
Aye.
St. Clair,
Aye.
Holly,
Aye.
Friess.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, President's prerogative. I'll be sending out a exit slip. If everyone can fill it out, I would appreciate it. We talked a little bit about board elections last week. The one question I have for everybody, especially the people that are running, is this, has anyone heard anything about any accommodations or things that they might make about signing back petitions?
I have not, but I know a number of people that are running for other positions, not related to school board, who have all been out getting signatures and doing all of that. So I believe it's still expected and.
Okay. I know that I saw that there's a webinar like in December, IASB, it's like #2 about running for board. I'm wondering if maybe there'll be something there, although that's getting a little late, but yeah, so you might want to check that out and see.
They had one, because I think they were doing two, and I don't know when the first one was, but I believe they're recorded and on the website if anybody is so inclined to check that out.
Okay. That's all I really have. Anyone have anything that they would like to talk about or anything for future agenda items? Lisa's raising her hand. She doesn't have a button to hit, so she's just raising her hand.
No. So, actually, I wanted to ask your opinion on a future board item for discussion, and we had kind of started to talk about this in our pre-board meeting, Kevin tonight. I was curious around, we're talking about when our kids are coming back to school in hybrid, in full person. So it got me thinking about what do we know about our student population's mental health at this point? And I was curious if the psych service people and the social workers, had any data experience around, what's going on in that area. Again, I think a lot of school districts have made choices based on assessment of risks. And I think that to me has always been a concern. What's happening to the psychological, state of our students and the risk of keeping them out, how much longer, and so I was hoping we could have some insight from the district as to what they're seeing and how that might, is that something that can be obtained or?
I will find out.
And the second,
Maybe we could do a District 75 report in December.
I don't know if we'll have it that quick.
Okay.
We'll try to.
Okay.
Yeah, see what's.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because we'll have to reach out to families if we haven't already. There's probably some anecdotal stuff. I don't know the depth of it.
Okay. It would be nice to hear something, I think. Because the reason I asked about for December is because the next board meeting in theory, will be back in school, right?
Pending the numbers.
That's why I said in theory. Okay. Sorry, Lisa.
No, that's fine. And then my other kind of question to the board is, and this comes, I thought about this a lot, especially, like I submitted a ton of questions to Dale, and she kindly called me, and also Wells was able to jump in. We were conveniently talking about some other things. So I found it, spent an hour and a half with her, and I found it hugely informative, enlightening, emotional, and I just had wished everyone on the board could have heard what she said. And not only from just the results standpoint, but the care that she took to explain things, her rationale, it just it educated me to a new level around literacy and the challenges involved with that from everybody, at the student standpoint, from an equity standpoint, from a teacher standpoint, from the administrator. So I had just wished that everyone could have heard that, so that, and then kind of piggybacking off what we've sort of heard from other board members over the past, year maybe, about wanting to get together more to discuss things. So I was just posting to her, suggesting to all of you, do we want to think about not having going back to the twice a month board meeting schedule that we used to have, but maybe a schedule where we just are informed about things and can talk about them in a less structured board setting. It would have to be a board meeting because it would be all of us, but every other month, can we take a deep dive into something that, like for example, Dale would have been a perfect subject to doing something like that. And I could have gotten, she asked me, do you want written responses to your questions? I just said, yeah, but we decided it was going to be more informative and enriching to have a conversation than it was. So that was just something I was hoping we could think about, talk about.
I think for high level items like that, I think it's a good idea. I like you, Lisa, found that it was very informative what she put together, but it was overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of information, a lot of links. So yeah, I mean, I think for high level items like that, I would not be opposed to just having like a specific meeting just for like a topic like that.
Yeah. It has justifiable. Or if we had a whole bunch of little ones, we would call it for discussion.
To throw it out there, if we were doing that, as long as it were posted as an open meeting for anyone to attend should they want to, that doesn't, and we wouldn't be necessarily voting on anything or making any decisions. It doesn't mean that all of the same administrators would necessarily have to show up if we were doing it in that format. Because I know that was one of the reasons we pulled back to one meeting a month, was because of the shared services and not having to burden Kevin with 4 meetings a month.
For example, would any work we do with Yvette be an open meeting then? So that would be a topic area to discuss things like that. So, and certainly not wanting to increase the work and burden that goes into what you guys have to do every month, but again, just add an additional forum to be better able to discuss some of the topics or learn.
I understand the need, so I think it's something we would need to discuss, because even if it's topics, we could structure different ones called a workshop.
Yeah.
We still understand all the processing that would go in place. While it wouldn't be all the topics, would still take place time-wise, as far as postings, notice, prep, be able to have that ready. I think the critical part of that is how do you decide what are the big events or the big topics that you want, in addition to just saying there's a bunch of little ones? Because I can tell you there's probably a big one and a bunch of little ones all the time. They can easily do that. So I think that would be critical to what that process would look like. And all for trying to provide more information to the board. I think the other thing we could do is look back at our previous board meetings and say, is there another topic on there that we could have removed that would have opened up more time to have more of that free flow conversation like we're talking about now? That's another option to be able to do. Or some boards have a work session prior to the meeting where they go through and have a lot of the discussion, and then it just rolls into the meeting.
Same day?
Same day. So you're taking care of it all at once. It's a longer day, but they're long days anyway. I think there's options, but I do think there does need to be some pretty good guidance on what those additional meetings would look like. Frequency.
Anyone have strong feelings?
So I would certainly support that. And one of the other things that we used to do at one time is we had a 1-year forward calendar that had some of those very important things that we thought were probably going to take quite some time that we could schedule, and then we'd know when they're going to happen, and then would probably vote on the report as a formal item in a fairly short order.
I think it's a good idea.
I'm not opposed.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Great. Anyone else have anything for the good of the group?
I have one more comment that I would be interested in hearing, since we did just finish the first grading trimester of, I guess, finding out how things went, since it was our first time doing a grading remote trimester. That could be more general. I'm not saying we have to compile lots of data, but I am kind of curious across the district how the teachers felt that it went based on the assessments given.
How doing the assessments online work for the staff and students? That was asking.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
I need you to repeat what you asked for, because I don't know if I completely understood yet.
I guess since in the spring when we had remote learning, we didn't do grading. So, and we didn't do standardized tests. So we didn't have anything to really pull back from. I can only go off of what my 3 children, are going to get on their report cards and what I see in Power School to know how that compared with previous years. I'm curious as a district, how the first trimester went in remote learning.
Pick your measure, I would think, right? Has to be the grade.
How did it compare maybe with the first trimester grades the previous year or something? I'm not totally sure what exactly I'm looking for. I guess I'm just curious how the first trimester went for the district. I realize the little kids don't get, letter grades and all that, but I have heard various anecdotal evidence from various parents, but I don't know how that compares, that's not very,
Trying to get some academic data that we can look at. Maybe attendance data.
Sure.
Right? Something's kind of went from one year to the next.
right, just because in the spring we didn't have any assessments, so we couldn't really go off of what that was. But since this was a more normal-ish school setting for the first trimester in a remote environment, how did that compare then with, what was done? So, yes.
Well, and somebody, so Kevin Holly, you'll remember this, but we had a presentation about a change in grading process, I think, from middle school teachers. I wonder, how did that go?
Standards-based grading.
There you go.
Ugh.
Although I will say from my kids' Power School, the 2 middle school, I mean, the even with the standards based, they were doing some of it with standards based before. Maybe it wasn't all uniformly implemented, but it wasn't drastically different from what I've seen throughout the trimester. But yeah, but just sort of an update, since now we have, or by the next meeting, there will have been, assessments and grades given. Just curious how we did, because that would also, I know we're all in agreement that the goal is to get the kids back into the classroom, no doubt, but just kind of curious how the first trimester went, given, a lot of the strides that I think the teachers and the effort that the teachers have put in, and how did that turn out?
Well, since I don't have a student in this district, did our students take standardized tests this fall? I heard that they did.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're not exempt anymore. Yes.
Okay, so those are computerized, and turnaround is in a matter of, if not hours, days. So I don't know why we wouldn't see a first blush at that.
I would venture to guess that the second round of assessments on that, though, are going to be more indicative of the learning, because they didn't do the end of the year assessments last year. So there was a lot larger of a gap to come back from. So I think the second round of those, which I understand, but,
Okay, anything else?
The one thing I think we have to look at, Kevin, you're on the declaration committee. we did have agreements as far as meetings for the boards, because we're talking about adding more meetings, so I think we've got to go back to that shared services document as we start talking about changing meeting structure, so that we're on the same page with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Good night.